My old man got me into gaming back when I was a toddler. Things have changed the 30-odd years since then, and I'm not just talking about the graphics. You see, my old man's changed a bit since then. Yep, he died. Back when my old man and I used GameFly, I'd use it to try out games that I'd heard of, but we either didn't have the cash for, or just didn't want to spend all that much on the game itself. One of the highlights of back then was that I got a game a day before it came out. I can't remember what it was, but it was pretty cool to get the experience to play the game before nearly anybody else did. Anyway, it was through Gamefly that I got to play Yakuza 0 for the first time. It was one of the last games that I ever played through the service. The monthly costs just weren't worth it, and since I was working around that time, I just got used games from GameStop for the most part on our monthly trips to the nearby city. We're rural, so nearby is an hour away. I had heard of the Yakuza games from some YouTube channels here and there. The Super Best Friends, for example, though they're no longer best friends, and I don't know if they lost their powers due to the breakup, would play the games on their channel. Most other people try to compare it to the GTA series, which isn't all that correct at all, but I can see why they'd get confused. You see, both of them involve daddy issues and crime in urban environments. Having grown up with wrestling, the overdramatic, oiled-up bisexual men beating the fuck out of each other felt right at home with what I'm used to. Kiryu and Majima ended up feeling more real to me than anything I saw on Mondays. Plus, the promise of more game per game is always something a broke-ass dishwasher wants to hear. What began as just a game to try out became one of my top 10 favorite games ever. The Yakuza series, though now they're going by Like a Dragon now, so that the entire world calls it that, began as an attempt by a man to bring a mature, new game into the world of Sega. The young punk speedster Sonic was good and all, but that hedgehog didn't have the same appeal to middle-aged Japanese men like a middle-aged Japanese man might. After the commercial failures that were Shenmue 1 and 2, Sega wasn't all that keen on trying out another game, and the real world focused on just some dude that wasn't blue and rolling around at the speed of sound. But in the end, the game Yakuza was made, and it turned out to be a money printing machine for the company, with a new protagonist as well as plenty of spin-offs to explore. Not that it's anywhere near Sonic levels, nor that of Persona, for that matter. But that doesn't matter. What does matter is that I have over a dozen of these games to get through, and since the current plan is to play one every 4 games or so, it's gonna take a few years. In that time, we will likely see another mainline title, a couple of spin-offs, as well as that Stranger Than Heaven game I'm really excited for. To begin this massive journey, we have the tale of two Yakuza, both alike in their wacky antics, and how the two of them change over the course of this prequel. Put down your bicycle, grab your takoyaki, and get ready to spill more bodily fluids than you thought you had in you as we find out what it takes to be like a dragon. Yakuza 0 has two protagonists, that being Kazama Kiryu and Goro Majima. I'm going by how we, English speakers, would say their names, but for the longest time I thought that his name was just straight up Kiryu, since even his loved ones call him that. I've heard the odd Kazuma-kun here and there though. Don't get me started though on how his adoptive dad's name is Shintaro Kazama, with an A. Kiryu, who I have to call Crime Dad, is not in his dad era quite yet. He's just some 20-year-old thug that is trying to emulate his own crime dad. I guess our crime grandpa, technically then. Kiryu is wallowing in a small pool when he needs to be chasing his dreams up a waterfall. Unfortunately, that waterfall is turbulent and full of more plot twists than a 7th century monk's attempts at getting kids to pray more often. Who knew that Japanese crime dramas and pretzels had so much in common? Majima, on the other hand, is a bit more experienced. For one, his ink is filled, showing that he's had more experience in his lifetime and is able to make more of a name for himself. His old brother was also involved in a major event recently, and while Majima himself was unpersoned, due to related reasons, he still has some street cred beyond just being the adoptive son of one of the Tojo clan's biggest badasses. The story of Majima in this game is one of regret, love, and trying to survive in an endless void surrounded by little more than greed and gluttony. I'll be covering the characters that most impact these two chuckle fucks, be they father figures or like brothers to them. Starting up, we've got Kiryu's oath brother himself, the koi that wishes to swim alongside his brother Nishiki. Oh, and before I forget, spoilers for this game and basically anything else in existence. If you're sensitive towards spoilers, then maybe don't watch this. What does half the cast and I have in common? We're all orphaned as shit. Dead parents as far as the eye can see. Nishiki and Kiryu are oath brothers, but they're also kinda adopted as well. Growing up in Sunflower Orphanage together, they grew up seeing Kazama as a father figure since he funded the place and was around a lot. However, and I'm not sure if I should include this fun fact here or not yet, but Kazama kinda sorta made all those kids orphans. Which on the one hand is pretty wholesome, on the other hand the dude killed a lot of people, enough to open an orphanage to deal with all the parentless kids he left behind. Meaning that he not only killed the men, but the women too. Hey, at least he's better than Anakin in that regard. Nishiki is sort of the Luigi of the two, the little brotherly type that is seen as kinda dog shit and such gets treated as less capable. We can see that early on, what with the fact that it's Kiryu that was marked for being blamed for the murder of some salaryman in the empty lot and having to deal with the fallout from that. Nishiki might be loud and more hip, but Kiryu is the one that is considered the serious threat. He may know his way around women, know where to drink and eat, but Kiryu knows how to beat 4 dudes unconscious with a bike and then go help a teenager deal with a panty-selling conspiracy. When he's forced to deal with the conspiracy against him, Kiryu over and over again tries to push Nishiki away, not wanting him to get hurt because of his own mess. Kiryu's self-sacrificing is an issue that will crop up time and time again over the series. I'd include footage of that, but I gotta play all those games first, and for now, though, we can see that he's impacting Nishiki by making Nishiki feel small, useless, unimportant. This will come to a head later. After Kiryu ends up getting pinned for the crime, he plans to go rogue, leaving the clan and investigating the case on his own. Holy shit, Kiryu is a detective in this game, kinda. I can't escape it. I can't escaping that feeling of disco. Nishiki wants to help, but Kiryu indeed tells him that this is something he's gotta do on his own. Even their older brother / uncle figure, Kashiwagi, tries to tell Kiryu that his plan is dog shit, but Kiryu is the protagonist, so it's gonna happen. He can slurp his cold noodles as angrily as he wants, but this plot is going to happen. Grand Master Brain Wizard Kazama has foretold of it. On the ride over to the Dojima HQ to get himself kicked out, the two reminisce about how Kazama beat the shit out of them for wanting to be career criminals. The two of them thought of this independently of each other, showing their bond and their fondness for having the shit kicked out of themselves. Leaving behind his brother, Kiryu fucks off to go and eventually beat the shit out of dozens of dudes. Nishiki goes back to Kazama HQ and waits for Kiryu to come back with the news that he successfully got fired from crime. This takes a while because Kiryu has a meeting with a cyborg, but once Kiryu does come back, he tells Nishiki that he can't hang out with him and Big Bro Kashiwagi anymore at their clubhouse because he's jobless and unpopular. So instead they go and hang out at Kiryu's house because, despite Kiryu's insistence that Nishiki needs to avoid him because he's so unpopular and without gainful employment. At Kiryu's shit shack, they talk about the plot some more, drink some beer, and show that Kiryu is the embodiment of a single heterosexual man despite all the oiled-up man-on-man action and crying while hugging that he gets engaged in. After some bullshit with the cyborg and a sex trafficker, Kiryu has Nishiki help him acquire drip since Kiryu's sense of fashion is more square than fucking SpongeBob. This interrupts Nishiki's time playing with balls, but he won't skip on the chance to rag on his homeboy sense of taste. Damn, Kiryu, you got COVID 35 years early, huh? Kiryu fucks off with his new drip and leaves Nishiki behind to go work his day job. Later finding him at a bar, on accident, while trying to meet up with his favorite human trafficker. Unfortunately, said trafficker of flesh ends up being touched by a strange man himself. Nishiki ends up getting his nose busted in for asking questions and has to watch as his sworn brother has to go and be a badass while he gushes like a schoolgirl in the worst way possible. To Kiryu's credit, he does start the fight by punching a dude that badmouths his brother, showing that even if he unintentionally hurts Nishiki's fragile ego, he still loves that United Healthcare CEO killing two-bit gangster brother of his. Wahoo! The turtleneck wearing golf enthusiast from Clan Dojima also says that he'll have Nishiki fucked up, adding to Kiryu's desire to not let his brother be harmed by his quest for justice. This only deepens the space between them. Every part of this conspiracy is threatening to end not just his own life, but those of all of his loved ones too. Good thing Kiryu doesn't own any pet dogs or orphans yet. It'd really suck if they were targeted as well. Once Kiryu heads back inside, Nishiki implores him to not do protagonist shit, but Kiryu insists that he has to do this alone, and is gonna go nab Kuze. His section is up next, so don't worry, and Kiryu's gonna clear his name by doing that kidnapping. He fucks off and leaves his best friend and mama of the establishment behind. Mama's being like the caretaker of the place. Generally the owner, from what I can tell, sort of like the mother hen to the dipshit chicks that she babysits while they plot crimes around her. The next time we see Nishiki, he and Kashiwagi are told that they need to assist in the hunt for Kiryu now the Dojima clan has gone full apeshit that Kiryu, a real estate agent, has been a thorn in their side for too long. Too long being like 2 or 3 days, but still. His brother and Brunkle don't want to do it, but because of bullshit rules of honor and conduct, they gotta go help hunt down the autistic icon himself. The next time we see our little bro, he pulls up in his whip right after Kiryu saw a woman get murdered in cold blood due to a negotiation gone wrong. The two of them get out of the city and head up into the mountains to escape the blood hunt called on Kiryu. Damn, man, you sire a new fledgling or some shit? Oh wait, wrong universe. Think he'd be Bruja? He feels kind of Bruja to me, or maybe like a less shitty Ventru. Anyway, Kiryu did once again pull the I gotta do this on my own, because he's such a fucking single-player protagonist and has this fucked up notion of self-worth. Honestly, it can hurt watching these dudes suffer like this. Nishiki doesn't make it much better, because once up on the mountain, he offers him a smoke and a poke. And by poke, I mean a 9mm round through his skull.
そいつがお前の最後の一服だ。何の真似だ。悪ふざけにしちゃたちが悪すぎねえか。なあ兄弟、いい加減にしろって。うるせえ。もうこうするしかねえんだよ。なんでこうなっちまったんだろうな。どっから歯車がずれた。組の命令ってことなのか、錦。そんなんじゃねえ。ん？桐生。お前、組の制裁で殺される人間がどういう目に遭うか知ってるか。堂島組ってとこは見せしめの死体を作る天才だぜ。人間がどの程度痛めつければ死ぬのかよく知ってる。それをとことん死なねえように殺すんだ。生かしたまんま。できるだけ長く苦しむようにだ。生きたまま解剖されるような拷問されて散々痛めつけられた挙句、そして後になって見つかった死体はもう人間と呼べるようなもんじゃねえ。俺はな、桐生、兄弟としておめえにそんな死に方させられねえよ。堂島組に的にかけられるってのはそういうことなんだ。桐生、組織に目つけられて逃げ切ることはできねえ。極道には時効もねえ。お前も分かってるはずだ。こうなっちまった以上、俺も極道としてはもうおしまいだ。風間のおやつさんもな。けどせめて おめえがひでえ死に方するのだけは避けられる。人思いに死なせてやれる。今俺にできんのはそれくらいしか。
すまねえ兄弟、お前にここまでさせちまったのは俺のせいなんだな。兄弟、頼みがある。俺をここで弾いたら俺の首を手柄にしていつか組でてっぺん取ってくれ。約束してくれ。頼んだぜ。
なんだよこっちみんな見んじゃねえよ桐生、頼むから
情けねえこと言うんじゃねえ。そんなんじゃてっぺん取れねえぞ。どうした？しっかり狙えよ。まだ死んでねえぞ。
撃てねえよ。撃てるわけねえよ。やっぱり俺はおめえと一緒じゃなきゃダメだ。国道として。俺なんか今まで生きてこられたのもおめえがそばにいたからだ。俺はおめえが一緒じゃなきゃ何やっても半端で意味がねえんだよ。
俺だって同じさ。お互いまだガキだってことだ。つまらねえ火種つけちまって、世話になったおやっさんにも迷惑かけて、それで死んで片付けちまおうなんてよ。極道がどうとか言う前に結局俺は半端なガキでしかね
俺だって人思いに死なせてやるなんて言い切ったくせにマジでダセえよ。
だよな。でもいつまでもガキじゃいられね
桐生、やっぱり二人で何とかして。
え。錦、今日ここであったことは全部忘れろ。俺も忘れる。俺は行くぜ。
どうするつもりなんだ。
カムロ町に戻る。俺にはまだやらなきゃならねえことがあるんだ。
ダメだって桐生、おめえ本当に殺されちまうよ。
いや、お前にもらった命だ。これでどこまでやれんのかこの目で確かめてやる。
桐生、
錦、まず俺からけ締めつけさせてくれ。お前とはこれまでだ。今日限り兄弟の縁を切らせてもらう。
桐生、
こっから先お前は二度と俺に関わるな。
Kiryu breaks off from him entirely and leaves him up on that mountain. Nishiki, according to some content, almost fucking died up there. It's the middle of December, and Kiryu left him potentially hours of walking away from any hint of civilization. Motherfucker, it snows up there. Nishiki may have been left to die, but then again, he did go up there with the intent to blast the brains of his better half all over the trees. But here we see that Nishiki feels that he is utterly worthless without Kiryu, that he'd just be dead without him. They both suffer being orphans from a culture that does not look highly upon them, both ending up with complexes that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. The next time we hear about the man left to die in the mountain is from Reina, the mama from earlier, who lets Kiryu know that he's back in town and upset. Kiryu gives Reina a memento for Nishiki, a watch that has a photo of them and their adoptive father in it. He still says that he wants no harm to come to his brother, and that if he dies, Nishiki isn't to try to avenge him. A lot of things transpire before Nishiki pops back into the story, but upon leaving a homeless camp, Kiryu encounters some goons sent for him before Nishiki also finds him. Tells him that Tachibana, his real estate boss, has been captured and is being tortured. The two work together to deal with this overall issue by finally having Nishiki tell Kiryu to go fuck himself with his protagonist complex and have a cool shirts-off fight against the goons, which they do. After the sweaty men make quick work of the less sweaty men, Nishiki and Kiryu bond over just how badass they are before heading to go hang out with a blind woman and a hobo, where Nishiki gets more sick lore drops. This is because, due to being a playable soap opera, families torn apart by racism and kept from each other by the worst game of hide-and-seek ever has infected the plot so deeply that Nishiki has basically missed a season of a show and is trying to keep up with all of it. Nishiki even points out how wild all this shit is, and man, even I struggle with the plot sometimes. Mostly in how the sequence of events happen off-screen, or how Makoto never once heard Majima's name somehow? But that's an issue for later. After promising to bring back the blind girl cyborg brother, Kiryu gets a page from the oldest Chinese man in Japan. Nishiki and Kiryu head out to go and try and call him via payphone as Nishiki rambles about how their crime dad likely planned for the siblings to reunite, and what daddy wants to happen will happen. Upon calling Elder Chen, he then just repeats the info to Nishiki before they storm a building being used to commit hate crimes against a half-breed orphan. As the orphan is sat there, dying, the two bust into the room and then go apeshit on the king of hell himself, Kuze. He's the gift that keeps on giving, with all the times that Kiryu has to beat the fuck out of him.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
Tachibana, the mostly dead man, is in no condition to stand on his own power, so Nishiki is sent out to go get his sister, reuniting with her too late to have them reunite while her brother still draws breath. The two of them, brothers in their own ways, let her have her time with her brother's corpse, as the men responsible for her brother's death continue to plot against her to acquire the land that they are standing on right now. Nishiki is seen later at Serena, where Majima is looking for him due to plot reasons. The two duke it out because Nishiki doesn't want to bring up Makoto's location. He puts up a decent fight, but he's not dragon material. Not dissimilar to how Tony Soprano never had the makings of a varsity athlete, Nishiki just can't seem to catch up. He does give Majima the lowdown on the lower dumps, with his chin freshly coated in such heavy loads. Majima takes off with the intent to try and find the blind woman at the center of this tragedy, while Nishiki is let to recover from having his ass beat from a man in a tuxedo. Kiryu and Nishiki later meet up at the empty lot, not knowing where Makoto is, despite the best of Chinese expats trying to track her down. The Koi boy brings up Majima, teasing us once again about the eventual dramatic meeting between Kiryu and Majima, but Kiryu only vaguely knows of him and doesn't trust him enough to want to work with him until they find Makoto. He then gets a page from an unknown number. He fucks off to go answer it, leaving Nishiki at the empty lot. Later on, Kiryu heads back to the homeless camp, and Nishiki finds him before Kiryu could find him. If only the siblings were this good at sibling-to-sibling mental communication. But I guess that's only available if you're gay enough, and unfortunately Tachibana never caught on that his best friend wanted to fuck sloppy style, and Makoto seems to be a disgusting heterosexual. Nishiki tells Kiryu that the war is on. Dojima is making moves on the Kazama family HQ. Nishiki suggests doing the non-protagonist option of just leaving the city in hiding, but thankfully some goons show up to instigate shit with the protagonist. Kiryu explains that Makoto is alive and in the hands of a man named Sarah, who is best buddies with their daddy, and that they just gotta stall for time while the adults deal with this shit. Kiryu stays back and does what he does best to the thugs, while Nishiki is to run back to HQ and tell Kashiwagi to go on the defensive. After Kiryu beats the fuck out of Kuze for the 5th fucking time, Nishiki runs on out of the HQ and tells Kiryu that the Dojima family forces are moving on the yacht that holds Makoto. The two of them have to go to the harbor where the grand finale finally begins. A small army of goons, headed by the new captain of the Dojima family, begin to lay siege to the vessel before the two brothers rock up in Nishiki's whip. Nishiki brings up the numbers, not knowing if they can handle all these men. Kiryu is used to fisting large groups of men by himself, and upon seeing the leader of the soon-to-be fisted men, he demands that Shibusawa stops. His men get between the two, and a fight is about to begin as Bronco Kashiwagi shows up with the cavalry in the form of 2 big-ass trucks loaded with even more dudes, including a couple of Molotovs. Now that the righteous path is clear, Nishiki and Kiryu can begin the Tokyo Fisting Festival of 1988. The two fight across the ship until eventually getting pinned down by like 3 dudes with pistols. Mind you, Kiryu then has to go on and deal with yet more dudes with pistols, just showing that Nishiki, yet again, is not enough of a protagonist to be able to fight proper boss fights. It's not enough that he lost to a Cyclops that canonically led to the crash of Japan's economy. However, Nishiki does show up in the nick of time to save Kiryu from becoming a killer. You'll see later on why this is laughable, but Nishiki points out that killing him is bad for reasons. And yeah, I guess killing a dude that's not really a threat anymore is bad, but he promises that if they're gonna kill one day, that they're gonna kill together. Such brotherly bonding. I'm guessing that reality would catch up and Kiryu would go to prison, which I know, wild concept, because both Shibusawa and Kuze end up going to prison off-screen. Speaking of off-screen, they later hook up at Serena's bar so that Nishiki can dog on his dog one last time. Kiryu has new drip, his classic look of a dark red shirt underneath a light gray suit. Kiryu is also signing back on with the Dojima family. Pesky continuity and his misaimed sense of armor are to blame for that. Kiryu explains that he needs to make things right, and that over the course of the most exciting week of his life, so far, he met a lot of people with strong convictions and wants to be like them. Being able to leave the shadow that is cast on him by crime daddy Kazama, he'd be able to be a Yakuza of his own. The suit being the focus then, his first real choice for himself, besides all of the times I had him choose to help random people. Kind of like how our cowboy Arthur Morgan kept saying he was a bad man. I'm not about to let predetermined characterization get in the way of me helping random people in a video game. As global temperatures rise in the real world to the point that in 25 years from now, I'll be living in a swamp-ass breadbasket, and everything south of Detroit is going to look like a hellscape. More so than it already does. I am not sorry for offending everybody from Ohio. Nishiki admits defeat and tells Kiryu that they're gonna go eat some food to make up for what he owes him. Kiryu saying he doesn't have much cash on him, despite me making him a multi-billionaire by the end of the game. Man doesn't want to spread the wealth around. I guess at this point in his life, it isn't infinite yet. Nishiki is Kiryu's brother. By oath, by adoption, and through fighting alongside each other, they've bound to end up with some of their juices mixing inside of each other. My own relationship with my blood-related half-sibling is complicated. I've always been more comfortable with cousins or people that are like cousins to me. Cousin-themed friends. For Kiryu, Nishiki is somebody to protect and love, even if that protection belittles and that love can at times smother. I get it, a desire to prevent others from suffering runs deep in me too. But at times we need to let others help us. Unfortunately, Kiryu struggles with that will remain for decades, in-game at least. Also, technically, I guess, almost decades in real life, because the games kind of have a release schedule that's, like, comparable to the passage of time in real life. But that's, like, not exactly 2 decades. So just a decade and change. Thankfully, by his most recent appearance, though, he finally learns to seek help from others. But it's mostly because he's got so much fucking cancer inside of him that his hair makes him look like a shitty J-pop star. Through their bond and how Nishiki treats him, he helps Kiryu to unwind. Kiryu's bound up like a slinky that's been fucked with by a gaggle of toddlers. Nishiki gives him that time and space to relax. He also gets him to consider the world around him beyond just how he can apply his fists to it. Eating out, be it food or women, are important for a growing future crime dad. The kindnesses that Kiryu displays in the future can be traced back to how Nishiki treats him as an actual brother outside of their criminal lifestyle. Behind the glitz and glamour is a man that wants to enjoy life with the man closest to him since they were both pants-wetting little shits living in an orphanage together. He also acts as a model and a warning regarding ambition and politics in the Yakuza. Nishiki will one day be as hungry as Shimano and Dojima are, lusting for the prestige and power that those men possess, and Kiryu would be able to attain just by being himself. He knows that he can't be a legend like his own brother, and because of this, he tries to play the game. Get up in the family by kissing ass and manipulating people socially, while Kiryu simply just makes problems stop being problems. By watching his little bro Kiryu does learn a degree of political maneuvering, needed when that empty lot blossoms into a grand tower for all to see. As below, so above in this situation. The cracks in their relationship show in this game, cracks that will widen with time, with silent resentment that Kiryu is too spectrum power to realize even exist. For all his heroism, for all his do-gooding, he can't see that he needs to understand his brother. Maybe that's why he laughed off a sex slave getting into a relationship with her abuser in a story because of funny pizza shenanigans. Or it's just poor writing cohesion. This is something that comes to a head later on, though. But this game helps show that Kiryu will need to learn to foster relationships with others, becoming the lovable crime dad we all know and love today. While Nishiki is almost like a big brother in regards to clan politics and how to be Yakuza in that regard, when the push comes to shove, Nishiki can't quite push it all out. Kiryu is there to help him with the relief that he needs, though. This helps to show the early stages of the mentor figure, daddy, and drinking buddy that Kiryu will become one day after losing oath brother after oath brother. It's almost comical how many times motherfuckers want to be Aniki with Kiryu and they just end up like Disco. That is shit, but somehow constantly haunting us with their presence. In the end, Nishiki is a lesson to be learned for Kiryu. a painful one. One that we never hope to learn. That no matter how much we love somebody, no matter how much time we spend by their sides, if we don't truly understand them, and they understand us, then we will end up losing them one day. Hell is other people. I've heard this over and over, right? And often people don't get what it means. It means that our judgments of ourselves tend to be based on our perception by others, or our perceived perceptions from others. But in a way, our punishments are largely external, and no character other than Kuze represents a punishing individual that tests the resolve and strength of Kiryu. His back is adorned with Enma, the king of hell, the judge of souls that enter the underworld. The world of crime is often called the underworld, and it's fitting for this former boxer, a man that tests the mettle of the junior Yakuza that is stuck in the middle of this miasma of suffering. We first meet him during Kiryu's tribunal held by the lieutenants of the Dojima clan, himself being one of them. He's more of a blunt instrument than a machinator of any sort. His approach to the conspiracy is the most straightforward and lacking in finesse. I'm a guess that he was a heavyweight sword and not one for dodging the blows in the ring. When Kiryu tries to plead his innocence, Kuze tells him to get fucked, cut his pinky off, and then turn himself in to the police. All this to get Kazama kicked out of the clan for having brought Kiryu in, which would indeed ensure that the lieutenants can squabble over his empty seat. When Kiryu tries to find the loan shark that got him to beat down the man that ended up dead in the empty lot, he ends up having Kuze show up to ruin things once again. Kuze insists that Kiryu betrays his darling daddy, but Kiryu won't have any of that shit. No bribery is enough to sway the fledgling worm who heads out to meet with Nishiki, leaving Kuze in his office to stew. At the meeting with Nishiki and Kashiwagi, Kiryu thinks that he can just leave the clan and beat the shit out of Kuze, which they both think is a dumb as fuck plan. The next time we see Kuze, Kiryu indeed tries to implement this plan, getting himself kicked out on a technicality, and then beginning his beatdown of every man between him and Kuze, including this weaselly bitch that keeps coming back for more beatdowns. This culminates in the man's defenestration and implausible survival. Not that the Yakuza series is consistent about if gravity is a deadly force or not. Upon finding the lieutenant, Kiryu and he do battle, with Kuze losing and then his boss showing up with the other two LTs in tow. They snitch on Kuze about accidentally kicking Kiryu out with no permission, leading to Kuze losing a chunk of his pinky. My, how the tables have turned. At least he gets to do it on a cool little pinky-cutting platter. Shit sounded like a carrot being bitten into, which, fun fact, roughly the same amount of bite strength is needed to break through a carrot as it is to break through a finger. Good to know if you ever need to de-digit somebody that's got your mouth covered. Just think of their finger as a carrot. Kuze stumbles off having lost a little bit of weight, only to return in a cutscene where his role as point man on the operation has been handed to Awano, after Kiryu learns from Tachibana that Kuze has no ties to the killing and therefore, most likely, just tried to scramble for power and tripped over his own overinflated ego. Normally, that doesn't make you lose a pinky, but Kuze is a little bit extra in that regard. But he does get first dibs on Kiryu, seeing him as his target of enmity. Kiryu eventually finds himself in the sewers and finds out just how extra this bozo really is. Motherfucker goes Akira on his ass, drives a bike down the sewer tunnel, engages with the future Dragon of Dojima in a friendly bout of sewer wrestling. Of course, I'd grinded outside content and had the secret martial art of White Vape Cloud to empower me enough to beat the fuck out of him, rendering the fight more of a speed bump on my journey through the cutscenes that give Kojima a run for his money. Despite his tenacity, he falls victim to poorly placed unlocks. Kiryu fucks off and doesn't finish the loser off, leaving him to once again seethe with anger, but this time covered in piss and shit. But hey, Kiryu didn't choose the locale this time. Kuze is the one that risked getting soaked in Tokyo's finest filth. He's next encountered when Kiryu left Sarana. The 3 LTs waiting for him, with Kuze getting to be the one to beat on him. But once again he falls in short order, not just because I pulled a shotgun at him and is lucky since I wanted this to be a one-on-one fight, but also because, once again, the powers of grinding in Japanese games matters far more than player skill. Once defeated, one of his bitch boys hits Kiryu from behind. Kuze is set up to kill him before Tachibana drives right into the failure of a king. Though because he do be built different, this doesn't actually kill the man. He and Owano are left seething, while Shibusawa remains calm and cool, as if he's got something up his well-tailored sleeves. We return to the scene of Tachibana's death, Kuze having had his weasel bitch boy working him over rather unsuccessfully. He decides that it's best to not just use pain, but Tachibana uses the chance to egg the weasel into delivering a fatal blow, which causes the man's own near instantaneous death when Kuze slams his head into the floor. Kiryu and Nishiki catch up with him not long after. Kuze's limp dick apology isn't enough for Kiryu, and so once again Kuze gets a beating. He goes unconscious, and while he's out, Tachibana lets Kiryu know that he reverse interrogated Kuze, classic move, and learned that Dojima is behind all of this shit to get rid of Kazama. Once Kuze stops napping after his ass kicking, he bitches and whines about the clan and how there's a traitor, but Kiryu's fuckfields lay barren. And he tells him that if any of the Tojo clan lays a finger on Makoto, that he'll crush the damn clan himself. Kuze can't help but see the boy, fitting in well as the member of the Yakuza now, no longer just some punk, as Kiryu leaves with the corpse of Makoto's brother. His next appearance is at a meeting between Dojima and Makoto. She wishes to trade the empty plot in exchange for the heads of the LTs, which, of course, doesn't happen, but in the entire deal-making process, he just seethes alongside Wano because Shibusawa is the new favorite son of Dojima. He departs with the others after Makoto is shot, boarding the helicopter as Majima has to deal with the wounded woman and the men that stand between them. The last appearance of the most beaten man in the city is when Kiryu is on his way back to support the Kazama HQ during the siege by the Dojima family. But he finds just Kuze standing there, street clear so that they can finally duke it out like the evil apes that they are. He's waiting to start the assault on the HQ until either he or Kiryu were the last one to remain standing. And with that, Kuze tells him that Dojima plans on full cleaning of house, taking over the Tojo and wiping out all families that stand between Dojima and total control. Either Kuze or Kiryu's pride will be beaten out of them as the two men meet in a clash of fists. Kiryu, of course, wins, casting final judgment on the judge himself. Kuze sees the dragon in the flesh of the young man, what Kuze sees in him. Why Kiryu is worth over 1 billion yen. But there's another man that seeks to be like a dragon, Shibusawa, who seeks to gain dominance and prestige by taking out all that Kazama holds dear, cementing him as the true right hand of the tyrant known as Sohei Dojima. He's gone behind his back, had Makoto shot non-lethally, so that he could use her as bait. He tracked the movements to spirit her away, and has the vessel in his sights. Kiryu leaves after a word of warning from Kuze that he'd be entering the blackest pit of hell dealing with this. But Kiryu is ready to brave any torrents that come in the river that he has chosen for himself, with the closest thing that the King of Hell has for a blessing passed on to him. Kiryu takes off with Nishiki, leaving Kuze to eventually turn himself into the police. His story of this game is from a side game I have no intention of ever playing, so I'll stick to his character in the game. I won't lie, he's a tough cunt. Emphasis on the cunt, though. He's a part of the system, an enforcer of the tactless violence that permeates the lifestyle that they all signed up for. What little honor he does have only manifests way too late, either due to inflexibility or cowardice. But he was a whetstone from which Kiryu could sharpen himself, steel his resolve, and learn to never, ever give up, even when it's a good idea. In a way, he reminds me of Malakath, a tester of faith, of ability for the Dunmer people. I know you likely didn't expect to hear Elder Scrolls lore in this video, but guess what, Sugar Tits? Those games and I share birth month and year. Unfortunately, both of us got beaten out by one of Canada's golden children, Justin Bieber. I can't not talk about the Elder Scrolls. It's in my DNA. Just like finishing side content before the main game is. Contrasting the fire and war that was Kuze is a man that helped guide Kiryu in more subtle ways. A man that knew loss. Loss of a hand, loss of a sister, loss of self. Tachibana was a half-breed, his parents being a Japanese man and a Chinese woman. For this he was discriminated against and forced to become strong in order to survive. But over time he learned that there was more to life than just having a pulse. He needed more to make it worthwhile, and even though he ended up dying to ensure her safety, his love for his sister made him truly feel alive. Kiryu met the 25-year-old real estate tycoon on the rainy streets of Kamurocho right after he had been exiled from the Dojima family. Dejected and without direction, Kiryu fell to his knees in the middle of the street. A man holding an umbrella approached him, offering him a gloved hand before inviting him up into his penthouse to speak further. There, Kiryu would find out that Tachibana knew a good deal about him. After letting him shower and offering him food, Tachibana explains how Kazama was connected to the grander scheme of things. That if any of the three LTs get that empty lot, they will be able to remove Kazama from his position, which neither he nor Kiryu want to happen. He wishes to have the lot for himself, wanting to work with Kiryu to make that happen. Kiryu leaves, not yet ready to work with him, but he does take his business card with him before doing so. Through some street-level detective work, Kiryu finds out that just how capable Tachibana and his real estate firm really are. They are going toe-to-toe with the Tojo clan in nearly every opportunity and coming out on top. Be it bribery, blackmail, or violence, they've gained a solid foothold in the city. Kiryu eventually meets Tachibana's second command, a man named Oda, who shows off the darker side of how the firm operates, though there are hints that Oda has done some of the work in a less than ideal manner for Tachibana's tastes. The next on-screen appearance of the cyborg is after Oda tests Kiryu in a fight. Tachibana couldn't bring Kiryu into the fold unless his second command trusted him. Trust and secrecy are things vital to his operations. He's earned the trust of the locals in the Champion District through helping keep the Tojo out. Overall, Tachibana is a splotch of gray in a largely black-soaked region of the city. Now that Kiryu can be trusted, Tachibana is willing to spill all of his beans, and this man's got the British diet level of beans to share. Turns out that Kazama predicted everything that's happened the last few days to Kiryu, his partnership with Tachibana being an insurance plan of sorts, as well as a way to work towards a larger goal that is still unknown to the one-handed real estate agent. During this entire process, Tachi helps Kiryu to get an idea of how much power he currently holds in an overdramatic fashion.
なんだと。
金は力。私は自分の力がこの先どこまで登場界に迫れるか試してみたい。ですがまだまだでしてね。今の私ではせいぜい10秒というところが限界ですが、いずれは殻の一粒を手に入れてカムロ町の支配者層に食い込むつもりです。あの土地はそれだけの価値を生みます。
あんたは一体。
With everything he's seen, Kiryu decides to finally get legal employment and joins up with the real estate firm. Tachi has Kiryu go off to work with Oda on a job. Some rival squatter situation is fucking with an ally of theirs. The dude is paying the firm to deal with the problem. Unfortunately, it's all connected to the Yakuza. They hired this man to extort money out of the old dude that both owns and manages the building. Kiryu deals with the Yakuza, which has ramifications down the line, namely the scene where Owano showed up to Serena and busted Nishiki's face into the bar. During that confrontation, Wano did guess that Kazama is behind the Tachi situation, and that Tachibana still hadn't found the owner of the empty lot. Kiryu refuses to give up Tachi. Wano fucks off before Oda suspects that Kiryu might agree to the deal and sell out Tachi, calling him to tell him to go into hiding. Oda really is just a cunt, isn't he? While on his way home to get some shut-eye after getting into more fistfights than a frat boy from Boston during St. Patrick's Day, he heads on over to the empty lot to ruminate. Unfortunately, there's a cyborg waiting for him there to trap him into a cutscene. In it, Tachi explains that he didn't think the Dojima family would move this fast. He still believes that the situation is manageable, though. It's manageable in the same way that a bar during a major holiday is. You're surrounded by hostile forces on all sides, and you gotta shout orders and hope that they get carried out without too many messes being made. The next time Tachibana is brought up is when Wano tries to bribe Kiryu with a fat stack of cash. But since I'm part of a real estate empire with myself as the president of it, I have no need for Wano's broke bitch dollars. He doesn't like this and shoots a woman to death, something that Kiryu doesn't consider be very cash money, but doesn't seem to give enough of a shit to pick a fight with the golf-playing prick. Tachi next makes a grand appearance by crashing his car through Kuze, showing that even Ubermenches can suck ass at things. He's there as the second worst getaway driver that Kiryu has during the game, and as his kidneys begin to fail him, the first worst getaway driver shows up in a shitty van to spirit the two away. Before that, though, they have a conversation about how, like I said, he's having issues relaying orders due to being surrounded by enemies on all sides. Kiryu finally realizes that he needs to let his friends help him, and that this protagonist mindset he has won't get him too far, since the story is no longer just a fun beat-em-up. He's had to fight a middle-aged man in the sewers. Dignity and honor are no longer on the menu. 86 that shit. Tachi, meanwhile, advocates being a sociopath and manipulates and uses those around you, because the environment he grew up in, the grind set that he has today, is rooted in a horrible upbringing. Still, though, the polite pugilist expresses a desire to have friends like Kiryu, showing signs that he, too, could have been a standard protagonist if he'd only been shown love and not massive kidney failure induced by blood loss. He knows that he can trust Kiryu with his life, even if he himself is still too distant to be willing to risk his own life. Kiryu is rubbing off on him, and I don't mean the kind that involves being stuck on a passenger train surrounded by salarymen that don't know how the tender touch of a woman. But as Oda ruins both his eventual demise and the tender moment, we are then whisked away to Little Asia, which at this moment just feels like Chinatown, but with a different name. I think we only meet Chinese immigrants there. While Tachibana recovers in a back alley doctor's bed, our favorite human trafficker explains why Tachi can no longer give two-handed employments. They both ran in a gang. Tachi got ambushed, which left his hand so fucked up they had to remove it. Like a coward, he didn't keep his bones to turn into a cool necklace, however, so point reduction from his badass rank for that. Imagine keeping your skeletal hand as a necklace. That'd be dope as shit and send only the right messages during high society business meetings. Because of his injuries and blood loss, his kidneys work about as well as a nepo baby in any real job, and because of that, he's actually a vampire that needs blood every couple of days. See, he's a cyborg that drinks blood to stay alive. His tattoo of a bat is especially fitting. After negotiations with the city's oldest Chinese man go less than stellar, our second favorite half-breed vampire, second only because Alucard is considerably more fuckable, shows up to explain that the ancient man will not change his mind and that they gotta get the fuck out of there. Tachibana suggests that Kiryu goes and become a hobo to survive away from the Dojima family's blood hunt, having had his apartment firebombed by some goons not too long ago. Kiryu agrees to be homeless and they part ways. After he stays the night, and in the process beats the fuck out of some teenagers that hunt hobos for fun, Kiryu is picked up by his worst getaway driver so that he can drive him somewhere cryptic. Thankfully, it's not long before it's revealed to be Tojo Clan's HQ, a big, fuck-off, traditional-looking building that over the series, Kiryu will have to fight his way through multiple times. Hopefully the groundskeepers are paid well for how often they gotta clean up blood and broken statues. Tachi is working the case of, does Kiryu get to live unmolested by Sohei Dojima, and in doing so, we learn that the acting second chairman of the clan admires Kiryu's Kazama-like qualities. Playing into this, Tachi offers a billion yen, 30% of his business profits, and another billion once it's proven that Dojo has been brought to heel to call off the Blood Hunt. He explained that on top of Dojima ending up in control of the Tojo clan being a bad thing, Kiryu is indeed worth enough money to bludgeon an entire room's worth of men to death with. Of course, at this point, I've been making over 1 billion yen every time I made a collections run for all the properties I manage, which is another point of conflict between story and gameplay. Like, no matter how much money Nico Bellic gets in GTA 4, the story still acts like he and Roman are in dire straits and need to keep the story going as is. But the deal is made, and on their way out, an unspoken agreement must be fulfilled. Kiryu, Tachi, and Fuckface must prove that they are indeed worth keeping alive. Weak allies are not worth keeping. And in proving themselves, they beat their way through the HQ and back to the rinky-dink van before leaving as the man in the chair talks about how badass Kiryu might one day become.
Kiryu Kazama ka. Ano Kazama ga 目をかけただけのことはある。あれもいつか化ける男なのかもしれねえな。
The terrible trio hang out at the pier, where Tachi stares wistfully at the ocean before explaining that somebody has found the location of the empty lot owner ahead of them. They need to move fast to beat out Shibusawa, the pencil-pushing Yakuza. Seeing as how he's a vampire and needs blood every 2 days, he's gonna send the city's worst getaway driver and Kiryu off to go collect the owner. Before the mission, though, they drop off Kiryu in town so that he can go eat entire menus worth of food for completion points, which the game insists upon shortening to CP and, like, maybe don't do that? Maybe don't say things like, you've earned more CP from side activities. Cyberpunk, don't fucking abbreviate that either. Well, I'm on my own bullshit right now. How about don't abbreviate the sole survivor to SS either? Once Kiryu is full of That was a Freudian slip. Once Kiryu is full of food, stray cash, and the ability to run longer, he gets the mission brief from Tachi about how the owner of the lot is named Makumura Makoto, a certain young blind woman that has been through enough hell to get a return customer bonus. She's currently in the hands of an ally, but that advantage will only last so long since Sonbori is the Omi Alliance's territory, and while it's one thing to fuck with the Tojo on their own turf, it's not the best idea to piss off yet another crime syndicate. Once in Sonbori, Oda shoots some hot lore dumps all over Kiryu's face. Namely that Tachi and he were in a gang a little while ago, and that's because of that gang activity that Tachi lost his hand. Kiryu eventually needs to babysit a phone alongside a former member of that gang. He runs a porn shop, but has a secret call room in the back. Kinda reminds me of a certain cyberpunk book, and it's room that no sound can escape from. But it's not nearly as cool as that. It's likely just used by gooners that pay extra to beat their meat into submission in the comfort of a cool side secret room. While in the masturbatorium, the two chat about the good old days when Tachi was gang leader. Turns out that he wasn't always the leader. He beat the fuck out of Oda to win that position, which made Oda's boner grow 3 sizes that day out of the love for this half-breed that can push his shit in harder than any other man he's ever met. Tachi growing up having to turn to crime to live apparently made him more badass than a human trafficker, which is why Oda insists that he leads their piss boy squad of delinquents. Oda returns and tries to downplay his raging erection for Tachi, but that doesn't matter. They get the girl from Sarah, who is holding her in safe captivity, with Sarah telling them to give Tachibana his regards before heading off. While on the highway, the trio are ambushed by the pencil-pushing Yakuza and his army of armed men, some with afros. Kiryu proceeds to kill like 30 men in the span of a few minutes or so, once again proving that Kiryu has never killed anybody ever. They then take shelter in some under-construction building, where Oda treats Makoto like a 50s housewife, which Kiryu, famed lover of women and their rights, doesn't abide by. This culminates in the reveal that Oda is a massive piece of shit who sold her into sexual slavery. Thankfully, Makoto got to stab the fucker. Shibusawa's men catch up back to them. Oda says that he'll hold them off and to tell Tachibana that he's secretly gay as fuck for him. While I do love homosexual love, I do not love the murder of innocent women for the sake of keeping up pining after your boss. So I'm glad that he gets ventilated, and from what I've read, Kiryu has a few nice words for the man decades later, while still holding Tachibana up in high esteem. You shouldn't have engaged in slavery, Oda! Kiryu and Makoto end up in a gaudy hotel, one that shows off the style of the era, style over substance, as the two talk about things. How Tachibana has changed since she last saw him a decade ago. How she had been in Osaka, Sonbori being a district in it, because he had said that's where he was going. But now he's a 25-year-old real estate, empire-building, handicapped vampire, and she's a blind former sex slave masseuse. So, they've both changed a lot in the previous decade. Reminds me of how I've changed in the last decade. Hell, I've changed multiple times even. When my birth giver died in 2016, that was the first major one. And then when my old man died in 2023, that changed me too. Like the siblings, I don't think I've changed for the better, but I've tried to do what I can despite how much I've had to endure. Like, two of my parents, their mother killed herself. She couldn't handle trying to live in a foreign land, speaking a foreign language. This left Makoto alone, to fend for herself, and she ended up running off to try and find her brother. In her desire to be reunited with her brother, she tried to meet with as many people that spoke Chinese as she could. This naivete for a young woman in a major city, to go with men on her own, eventually led to Oda, who would go on to sell her not a year less than when he and Tachibana would meet. The circumstances of all of this are unlikely, but the very human causes of all these problems stick with me. She's unfortunately a woman stuck in a story about the world of violent men. While she eventually will try and have some agency, she's a vision-impaired woman that can't bench press a tiger. Her resolve, though, to be with her brother and eventually avenge him, everybody can understand that. Kiryu helps her, tells her that life in the dark can be hard, but he can help her make the first steps. She steals her resolve to meet with her brother, something that I can't even force myself to do in the real world. He dumps her off with the hobo he stayed the night with. Tachi can't be reached at the moment, and he takes off to try and find him. Turns out that his whack-ass kidneys acted up again, and he needed the good suck to stay alive. So he's hooked up to his vampire machines when Kiryu meets with him again. The man apologizes for not being reachable before realizing that Oda let some beans out in the form of Makoto's connection to Tachibana. Kiryu explains what went down. Tachi assumes Oda is dead, and at no point does Kiryu explain that Oda wanted to make out with Tachi sloppy style. Like, Kiryu and Makoto, he blames himself for this mess, and the people that have gotten hurt in the process. And the worst part is, he's not even the wrongest kinda. Like, the empty lot, that's not his fault. Fleeing China to become a criminal in Japan and in the process leaving behind his mother and sister, yeah, that kinda is his fault. Tachi goes on about how being a half-breed made members of both groups hate him. So instead of a cool bonus to charisma like a half-elf would get, he instead got saliva all over him and his sister whenever they'd go to the theater in China. The other moviegoers just spitting thick loogies all over them as soon as the lights went out. He had reached a point of nihilism, of despair, in the criminal underworld of Japan. Not even a raging homo to fight alongside him was enough to make him desire life's bullshit. But hearing that his sister and mother had come to Japan, his lust for life came back as he wanted to be there for his little sister, and at that point, non-dead mother. Unfortunately, by the time that he tracked his grandpa down, the old geezer was dead, along with his mother, leaving just Makoto to try and find. He needed to find her, not just because of his love for her, but because of the dangers associated with the empty lot that she was bequeathed in their grandfather's will. With this in mind, he approached Kazama, who was more than willing to work with him. Dojima, at the head of the clan, with all the power and wealth promoting the plot, and being able to be the chief influencer of the project to build a big fuck-off skyscraper there, would become a monster that would cause the Tojo to collapse in on itself. Kazama told him to get into real estate using the information network he formed as part of his search for his sister. This would allow the firm to have a stronger legal claim over the empty lot than the Dojima family ever could. Kiryu finally puts two and two together, realizing this means that the entire real estate business was Kazama's plotting. I've read that in Japan, restating shit that people say helps show that you're paying attention, which is partially why all the snakes from Metal Gear do this, but it also helps the audience understand things if they were, say, preventing suicide over text while trying to pay attention to the game. I'll be playing a cutscene here because it's just too good not to. There's so much here that I can feel just as he can.
ただ妹は家族を捨てた私を恨んでいるかもしれません。数日前セルさんから妹は目が見えないと知らされた時、私は兄と名乗らない方がいいと思いました。
今はそう思っていないってことか。
あなたが私に聞かせてくれた牧村誠という女性はやはり私が記憶する妹でした。彼女が蒼天堀にいた理由も私を探すためだった。ずっとこんな私を探してくれていたんです。
立花、
桐生さん、私は妹にシャオチャオに会いたいです。今の私はそのためだけに生きながらえています。もう二度と逃げたくありません。
もうすぐ会える。彼女はあんたを恨んでなんかいねえ。だが今もあんたの助けが必要だ。
I've known little more than loss in my life. I was placed into CPS because of my caregiver's inability to function as a human being. The day that she died, I did not feel as he did upon learning of his own mother's death. It was a mix of relief that she could never directly harm me again, through either trying to blackmail me or through her choices reflecting poorly on me, but also relief that her suffering was over. In the same manner that when my old man died, one of the few things my uncle could muster to say was that at least his suffering was over. Like her, he died a drug addict that sold himself for money to afford his addictions. Addictions that his parents refused to acknowledge. Like Tachi, I was separated from my family members one by one, but out of choice on my part, to not watch them slowly kill themselves. When he said that, meeting his sister again, calling her by her Chinese name, hell, that's the only reason he's hung on for so long. I get it. I understand it. In my life, I have prevented the suicides, thus far, of 147 people. I'm good at it because I know what it's like to not have much, if anything, to live for. But I stay alive because I have a few people that I care about. Nothing else in life is worth tolerating the pain that life brings. Love is the only reason to keep going. That love grows more precious with each death, each separation. I'm doing this project out of the love for the idea of my old man. Despite everything that he did, there are timelines that could have existed where we had a lasting parent and child relationship. But between his inability to accept responsibility and my standing up for myself, finally, it never worked out. The two eventually end up contending with an assassin from China, who puts 2 rounds into Kiryu. Tachi realizes that this is the man that killed the dude in the empty lot, the murder that Kiryu was framed for. Tachibana threatens to kill himself if the man doesn't let Kiryu live. Since he's only paid to bring in Tachi alive, the two leave while Kiryu is left to recover in the care of the local Chinese until eventually waking up and speaking with the Elder. The old fart explains more backstory, that the reason the plot of land even exists is that the grandfather had sold off all his other surrounding land after World War II so that his daughter might one day find him and somehow, via knowing about the land. Anyway, it's because of the grandpa that all of this ended up happening in a bout of dramatic irony. Life sure just fucks you over sometimes. All he wanted to do was be reunited with his daughter, but ended up causing her to kill herself, his granddaughter to get sold into sexual slavery as well as getting shot, and then his grandson ending up getting tortured and killed, all because one middle-aged man wanted more wealth and power. After reading it back to myself, I'm like, man, yeah, the family went through a lot of shit. Chen does point this out, that it's the Yakuza who directly caused most of this to happen, and as they're speaking, Tachi's likely getting worked over by the Dojima family, who are known for their expertise in torture. Sort of like the Legion in Skyrim, it's one of the first hints of their inner darkness, being the torture chambers. Chen wishes to mobilize against the Dojima, but knows that if he does so, little Asia would be tolerated no longer. Kiryu promises to be he and his people's champion, to be the one to bring fire and war to the Dojima family. Chen is happy and tells him to go babysit Makoto until they can locate Tachi for Kiryu to rescue. This eventually leads into the situation we saw before with Nishiki, how the Dojima are defying the interim second chair-sitter's orders to stop being cunts since Tachi paid a fortune for Kiryu's safety. Not wanting to cover the same stuff again too much, I'll just skip to Tachi being tortured. He's getting his shit wrecked, namely his digits, as the weasel tries to get him to talk via pain. But Tachi is truly built different, and the loss of toes is not enough to make him give in to some cunt that only signed up because he likes to hurt people. He pokes at Kuze that he's gonna be seen as a fuck-up if he doesn't get the info. The weasel needs to be told by Kuze not to kill him since they can't extract info out of a dead man. Wise for Kuze to understand. Maybe not so wise to say out loud as Tachi eggs the cunt to hit him once more. This time with the sledgehammer that has claimed more tootsies than a kid on Halloween. Tachi can only let out a pained laugh after ensuring that he'd never have to talk. Kiryu and Nishiki break in right after this, and after duking it out ape-style with the help of a shotgun because fuck Kuze's use of lackeys, Tachibana has the last conversation of his life with Kiryu before succumbing to his injuries. And yet again, here is the whole cutscene because I can't not show it.
Tachibana, すまね。遅くなった。
謝ることありませんよ。桐生さん。
おい、立花。よせ。妹がすぐそこまで来てるんだ。ずっと会いたかったんだろう。今連れてきてやる。錦頼む。誠をここに。分かった。
もう間に合いません。
立花。
桐生さん。ラオグよ。操ってるのは堂島宗平です。
なんだと。
クゼが言ってました。すべての人は堂島が引いています。風間さんを排除するためにあなたに殺しの濡れ衣を。
おい、立花。なんだ。
こんなことにこん
立花、お前の妹は必ず俺が守る。約束する。絶対に守るからな。
At this point, he is dead, and the next cutscene should be saved for Makoto's section, so I'm just gonna talk about Tachi. Tachibana was a man that grew up in pain and misery, who hardened himself against it, and in the end, died for the sister that he loved more than anything else. The sister that gave his life meaning. He and Kiryu both taught each other much. His handling of Yakuza politics, his ability to keep going despite everything, his morality, to an extent, enforcement of it, it spurs Kiryu on, and he grows to embody many of those skills and traits. Without the death of Tachibana, most of the series could not have happened. His death and the impact it had on Kiryu would one day cause a series of dominoes to fall, resulting in the dissolution of not just the Tojo clan, but also the Omi alliance. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's a story for another dragon-adjacent man to experience likely 3 years from now after I catch up on the rest of these games. Which, good time to say, I might skip 3 through 5. I know 3 might get the Kiwami treatment, though. If it does, I'll play, but I'm still on the fence since I don't want to endure the least polished games. Anyway, with that, I will conclude the section on our favorite half-breed vampire real estate agent that is also a cyborg. If you can find me another one, please do. It's a very narrow category, and I love to see what there is out there this guy is such a very narrow there's nobody like him. Kazama's section is the one that gave me the most problems in terms of how to cover him. He's got so little screen time, yet he impacts the story like few other characters. I aim to only have coverage of when they're on screen or the story is relating to what they're doing, but this dude set up most of the plot right before he was sent into prison for running a gambling den. It's said that the 3 LTs might be responsible for his time spent behind bars, but that did nothing to stop his plans from coming to fruition. I guess in a way he's like my old man. He's a father that haunts the narrative despite having very little screen time. Hell, he's a foil in a way. Kazama was heralded as the best of the best, for not only the Dojima clan, but also for anybody in the Tojo in general. And while he was the more proactive of the 2 kids that my grandparents had, he was still a massive fuck-up in nearly every regard. The positions are flipped for he and I regarding how Kiryu and Kazama relate. Not that Kiryu is a fuck-up, but I'm generally speaking of the golden boy of the family. Graduated with honors, no arrests, didn't turn to prostitution to fund my drug abuse. So in a way, I can relate to how Kiryu idolizes his father up until later in the series, for while he still loves him, he begins to see some of the flaws of the man that likely loved him the most. I often don't feel as though I was unconditionally loved. I was conceived solely because my old man wanted a kid, and he convinced his slightly younger, equally drug-addled girlfriend to get knocked up by sleeping with a bunch of his relatives. To give you an idea of how that situation is kinda fucked, not all of them were single, and not all of the single men were in open relationships. I'm both the prodigal child of my family, as well as a dark secret in a way. I wasn't able to go to the family reunions without causing a stir, yet my grades were the highest out of my entire generation, and I was showered with pride in what amounts to bribes in the form of new video games. But that isn't what I needed. I needed a stable, loving family, which is something I never got to have, and to a degree, Kiryu didn't have that either. While Kazama loved Kiryu very much, as far as I can tell, he wasn't the shining beacon of honor that he pictured him as. Kazama had more blood on his hands than damn near anybody else in Kiryu's life, having gone to where he was in both the Dojima clan as well as the Tojo in general via the liberal application of bullets to chests. His lifestyle was something out of a John Woo flick, while Kiryu's ascent was more along the lines of an errant samurai trying to make up for his master's indiscretions. More than once, he would eventually try to go on and live a civilian life. Kazama is the man that Kiryu most looked up to, the man that he joined the Yakuza to try and be more like. But as he experiences everything that is involved in the lifestyle, I feel as though Kiryu comes to an understanding that he doesn't want to be like his dad. While my old dad had some traits that were worthwhile, he was pretty good with directions, and he did get clean for a long time before he was pressured into getting back into stimulants by an addy-addicted middle-aged man who lived with his mother. I realized fairly early on that he was lacking. He had no sustainable long-term goals, and even when Social Security fucked up and gave him like 50 grand, he managed to fuck that up as well. Didn't pay me back, kept doing drugs, tried to get land, but the land was massively overpriced. Couldn't even keep a truck operational because he cheaped out on the spark plugs. This section isn't following the story as it happened, because it doesn't need to. He only shows up at the very tail end, and still, it's more about how it relates to Kiryu than how it expands on he himself. Kiryu realizes that he needs to get back into the Yakuza, but advance and grow on his own terms, not those set by or represented by the man that partially raised him. In the end, we all need to learn to grow beyond our parents, become better than them, and at times, make up for the sins that they have committed over the years. I desire to do as many charitable acts as I can in my life, funded through donations I get eventually, in part because I still desire to be the best of my family. I want to show that, despite everything, despite all the heartache and pain, that there's no excuse to not be a good person. That we aren't defined by the people that forced us into existence or raised us. I want to be there for people in ways that nobody was for me, or my old man. Abuse and neglect are cyclical. He continued the cycle, and while he wasn't outright abusive, like my birth giver was, he still massively fucked up by not only not stopping her, they broke up because she cheated on him. The fucking irony, man. But also by never once showing me what a good person was like. Also, little fun fact, he found out that she was cheating on him when they went to go see a Jim Carrey movie, and he carried a hatred for Jim Carrey for the rest of his days. Fucking... He at best was tolerable to most people, outside of those that are transphobic or old-fashioned like some bitch that gave him shit for having tattoos when he was working at McDonald's. But joke's on her, because she's just as dead as he is now. I refuse to continue the cycle. I want to create a positive feedback where I can help ensure that the younger members of my generation and my family can do good deeds and not suffer for it, where they can live not in the shame of poverty, where they can help those stuck in a rut improve the lives around them with what time they have left on this bitch of an earth. After my old man's death, I don't have much hope for a brighter future beyond making things more comfortable for people before they die. But I'm burdened by the corpses of more parents than most people will ever have. Just as Kazuma Kiryu needed to cast off the expectations that were thrust upon him for being the adoptive son of Shintaro Kazama, I too need to cast off the limiting expectations put upon me by my family members, both living and dead. Now we're on to the big man himself, the future Dragon of Dojima, before then heading on to Majima's most impactful characters. Thus far, I've told the stories loosely of the other characters in the order that they happened. This video is an experiment in a different way of handling story, mostly spurred on by the fact that there are two protagonists, which really messed up how I handle things. I figured that each one had too much to say about them and the characters that impacted them, so I'd better cover the characters first, and then relate how they impacted them in more detail in sections afterwards. This may result in the story being hard to follow if you hadn't played the game before, but I can honestly say that the story is both dense enough that even I'm missing some details, but also that there's more about the characters' places in the story than it is about the story themselves. In a similar way to how I learned about the JoJo series by learning about characters and concepts, but not how the stories unfolded, I guess you're experiencing the story in that manner because of my desire to experiment. Let's hope that experiment is worthwhile, because now I'm on to the man of the 69-hour-long playthrough that I had. And yes, I will in fact find humor in the fact that the game about the felonious fistfuckers took me the sex number of hours to finish. Which isn't to say that Majima is lacking in being a dope-as shit dude. His story touches me a bit more in certain regards, but since the series is mostly about Kiryu, I decided to present his well-toned bowling ass first. Whether or not he's bowling on the behalf of soup, or for the acquisition of such a moist meal, who's to say? But at the end of the day, he can stand tall with his cock strutting out, as he becomes a better person across this grand journey. Kiryu begins the story as kind of a shithead, collecting money on the side for a dude that isn't tied to the clan, a money lender. Though through this work, he beats the fuck out of some salaryman who wanted to live beyond his means, something that my old man could relate to since he died in massive debt, though a good deal of that was medical. Eventually, Kiryu ends up stuck in the middle of a plot so far beyond him that it crosses multiple cities, gets a lot of people dead or arrested, ends up dethroning his boss, and ends up with the narrator for JoJo's bizarre adventure at the head of the Tojo clan. A lot to have been involved with at the tender age of 20. I first played this game when I was around the same age actually, if not slightly older. But even then I could feel the similarities between us. Like a love for minigames, and the ability to lift most other humans, though, due to injuries, I can no longer lift people that weigh 300 or more pounds. But one day, I'll relocate 2 of my limbs and be able to deadlift plus-sized lads again. During his journey, he makes new friends and appreciates his old ones a bit more. But mostly the new ones. As I said before, the cracks in the relationship he has with his old brother Nishiki shows off during the story of this game, helping to make what happens in the original game more meaningful. Let's begin a bit with him, relating back to how he helps mold Kiryu into the Tojo clan's plot device over the series. Through Nishiki, Kiryu is able to see almost a foil in some ways, where Kiryu starts out as just a dumb thug that needs his more savvy brother to help guide him in the underworld beyond just what to hit really hard. He eventually evolves into a man that, through the hardships of both civil and clan wars, comes out far ahead of where he began. His prestige is almost on par with his father's. His battle prowess is nearly unmatched, and he has accumulated enough financial acumen to ensure self-sustainability, at least until the taxes that Majima helped put into place came into effect, and he lost a good deal of his assets. In the beginning, Nishiki tried to explain how to get ahead by being a kiss-ass, but Kiryu just needed to kick some ass to get to where he needed to be. Nishiki just can't keep up with him. Kiryu is a monster in human form, a dragon amongst floundering fish. And for that, Nishiki will one day resent his beloved brother, but for now, through Nishiki, Kiryu is able to get some degree of savvy while realizing that the safe and slow method isn't his style. He needs to be brash and dumb and blunt. He's the protagonist of a series that rewards that behavior, with his villains often acting more like Nishiki, at least until characters like a certain pants-stealing Osakan crop up as legitimate threats for him to come out of retirement for. Next up, we've got the man that helps cut him into better shapes. Just as Vivek attempted to do so for his people, so too did Kuze unintentionally end up in the position as the King of Hell, the man of the underworld that would act as the guardian for its deepest pits. One who would keep out Kiryu first out of pride, and then, well, he still says it's pride, but in the way he does it to make sure that Kiryu is ready for this shit. Ready to go up against another potential dragon. Kuze is the past of the Yakuza. Brash, violent, direct. With honor that can be best described as an idealized version of what a lot of older Japanese material would possess. uncritical of authority, might making right, the leader needing to be a meathead capable of winning battles, not by being smarter, but by never staying down. Kuze doesn't seem to see the contradiction. The man that he works for, Sohei Dojima, did not gain his prestige and position through his own grit and mettle. No, he coasted off the successes of his underling Kazama, building himself off the mountain of bodies created by Kiryu's father instead of off of any earned reputation or actions of his own. To say that Kuze is what's wrong with the old guard is a bit of a misleading notion. While yes, he's part of the problem, he's also more so a byproduct or just another cog in the wheel. The way the Tojo is set up, and indeed most organizations, is in a top-down manner. Power grows the further up the pyramid you get, with each descending layer getting less and less power, as well as things like income and prestige. The hierarchy is maintained via violence, as most hierarchies through history have. It's little more than something like feudalism, which seems to be how humans like to organize themselves over and over again. Time is a flat, fucking circle. You can see it in how we're starting to see small pockets of control exerted by tech bros and the like. The loose grasp on anarchist theory that anarcho-capitalists possess, leading to situations not so similar to Andrew Ryan's Rapture. The ideology of a government assistance leech that hated her own sex, dying in hypocrisy, and followed by more sweaty out-of-shape trolls than those that follow Malakath. You know, I didn't wake up today thinking that I'd compare Ayn Rand to a Daedric prince, but here we are. Anyway, Kuze tested Kiryu's might, his resolve, and my ability to tolerate grinding in Japanese games. Within Tachibana, we find the man that helped build up Kiryu's quiet dignity. That is, when he's not smashing up street thugs with bicycles and shouting like a fucking evil ape. The way he held himself had his convictions for the betterment of another, which could be read as merely self-satisfaction at their own sense of morality and honor being appeased. It's something that we see in Kiryu over time as the series goes on. He's never truly happy until he can dedicate himself to the kids under his care, in the same way that we can only see Tachi happy when he is about to see his sister, or at least when he believes he will be able to do so. Just as tragedy befalls the siblings despite their earnestness and just wanting to be reunited, an unambiguously positive thing, so too will Kiryu face similar tragedies across his entire life. It's in this game that he sees that a good cause and a chipper outlook aren't enough to get by in life. He needed to become a beast, a monster, a dragon. In Tachibana's death, he would find his voice of rage and ruin, the inner fire that would turn him into the worm that he was born to be. Not a scaled being laying atop a hoard of ill-gotten loot, but as a benevolent force of violence and wisdom, an irrepressible miracle in human form. His ascent towards heavenly virtues is one marked by violence. He may not have killed 6 billion demons. He may have trashed 6 billion goons. Time to reflect on what killed Abraham Lincoln. Daddy issues. Kazama, as I just covered in the previous section, so this is going to be a lot shorter, is his dad that he tried to aspire to until he realized that aspiring to be the ideal of him wouldn't get him to where he needs to be. He needs to believe in himself and live in accordance with his own values and methods. In the end, Kiryu needed to gain something for himself that he hadn't yet had. And that missing piece? It was faith in oneself. Well, I guess it would be nice if I could touch your body. I know not everybody has got a body like you. Oh, but I gotta think twice before I give my heart away. And I know all the games you play, 'cause I play them too. Oh, but I need some time off from that emotion. Time to pick my heart up off the floor. Oh, when that love comes down without out devotion. Well, it takes a strong man, baby, but I'm showing you the door, 'cause I gotta have faith. Oh, you have faith, 'cause I gotta have faith, the faith. I gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. Baby, I know you're asking me to stay. Say please, please, please to go away. You say I'm giving you the blues. Maybe you mean every word you say. Can't help but think of yesterday and another who tied me down to lover boy rules before this river becomes an ocean, before you throw my heart back on the floor. Oh, baby, I've reconsidered my foolish notion. Well, I need someone to hold me, but I'll wait for something more. Yes, I gotta have faith. I gotta have faith, because I gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. I gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. Ooh!
Whoa!
I'll just have to wait, 'cause I gotta have faith. I gotta have faith. I got to have faith before this river becomes an ocean, before you throw my heart back on the floor. Baby, I've reconsidered my foolish notion. Well, I need someone to hold me, but I'll wait for something more. 'Cause I gotta have faith. I gotta have faith, because I've gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. I gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. And with that, it's time to move on to the second half of this video, in which I discuss Goro Majima's retinue of rebellious renegades. It helps teach this, comparatively, old dog some new tricks, like how to get up into people's shit. Sometimes we're born incapable of functioning like a regular human being. Other times we break due to the things that we experience. But sometimes we just need an excuse to go batshit. Tsukasa Sagawa is the man in charge of Majima's exile, the jailer to his gilded cage, and the man that ensures that the limbo he's stuck in only ends when Shimano decides that Majima has served his purpose. Very early on, we see that Majima bends to him, even if all he wants to do is to bash his nose in. When told that the promised 100 million yen that would have gotten him back into the clan is in fact not enough, and that Sagawa is arbitrarily stacking another 500 million yen on top of it, Majima is pissed, but he can't really do much about it. Sagawa presses him, asking if he'd be willing to kill to get back into the Tojo clan before walking away and taking the top hostess of the Cabaret Grand with him. Every aspect of Majima's life is under Sagawa's control. He has men watching him at all times. His night job is to make him a small fortune, and his days are largely spent in his nearly empty room, save for a small radio. It's like living under a strict parent that only raises you because they legally have to, which I can relate to during the time that I was stuck with my birth giver, though I had the added stress of having to keep an eye on my half-sibling, which, in a way, is like having to keep an eye on the cabaret. Later on, Sagawa calls in to have a drink with Majima. He's normally just an asshole, so there's more to this than drinking with his stooge. When they do meet up, Majima has no time for Sagawa's empty gestures of friendship, and eventually the man just settles in to ask the caged mud why he wants so badly to return to the clan's good graces. If it perhaps had something to do with his oath brother, Taiga Sajima, who is currently sitting in a prison cell for the murder of 18 men 3 years ago. Majima admits to it, and he wants to be there when his brother is eventually released, something that he can't do if he's a pariah to the clan. The idea is strange to Sagawa. He has no sense of loyalty himself, let alone for his own oath brother Shimano. Shimano being Majima's boss, and from a rival organization. I did some digging, and based upon Shimano's accent, he may originally be from Osaka, but ended up signing on to the Tojo instead of the Omi. Without going too deep into it, I suspect he's been a plant the entire time, but that's a topic for a later day. Sagawa returned to the topic at hand, that of the willingness to kill to get back into the clan. He presses the issue that to be a true Yakuza, one must have blood on their hands, since evidently you don't get entered into the family through murder like our favorite gabagool lusted Mediterraneans. To hammer home how much he loves murder, he also says that if Majima keeps his non-murderous shit up, he'd just make his job harder. Sagawa wants somebody killed, says that some dude named Makoto needs to draw his last breath, really sells him as a piece of shit. As I've already covered, Makoto is a blind woman that was a victim of sex trafficking, so either his info is faulty, or that's just the cover story. This sweetened deal is supposed to make the deed feel less bitter. Majima leaves with the info to try and track this Makoto down. After some shenanigans at the Gooner-adjacent establishment, known as a telephone club, Majima tracks down a woman that's connected to the man. He's got girls looking for a man with a bat tattoo, never saying why, but the dude that they work with isn't anything like Sagawa said. He's no pimp. He protects them, in fact. Any info on the bat tattooed man is the only info that he asks for in return. Sagawa isn't seen again until much later, but the fact that either his info is shit or he's full of it helps show that he's not on the up and up. You know, for a dude intent on getting a young lady murdered. He next shows up in Majima's office area, waiting for him right after he's already got Makoto in a safe house, very much not murdered. Not that the public knows any different, because of story reasons, a body double was killed by some batshit bisexual that I'll touch upon later. Sagawa asked why Majima didn't tell him about the hit before it became a front-page news. The body had the identifying parts of it removed, namely the face and fingerprints, yet it was dressed up. Majima spins some bullshit about not remembering much, post-killing Hayes and all. Kinda like post-nut clarity, but in reverse, I guess. He then asked why the previously mentioned batshit dude picked a fight with Majima at the cabaret. Majima just said it was a drunken brawl, which is fitting for the dude, so Sagawa drops that too. Sagawa fucks off and says he'll talk with Shimano, but Majima worries that Sagawa will catch on eventually and make moves to try to get Makoto out of Sotenbori. This plan goes awry when a betrayal from a Chinese doctor leads to Majima, the dude that was posing as Makoto, and the lovely lady herself to try to escape the city. Sagawa is cut on and is closing in. This culminates in Lee, the massive man himself, getting blown the fuck up as Majima and Makoto are stunned by the blast. Sagawa acts like a disappointed dad as he's about to finish off the Cyclops before getting shot a couple of times himself by Sarah. Sharp-dressed spook that he is. Later on, we see the previous scene in a new light, and that, like Dojima, Sagawa gets to fume with impotent rage. Love to see it. Good for him. But somehow the fucker is up to his bullshit again, torturing Majima the next day after getting shot in the back and the hand, seemingly being affected by the hand more so than the shot in the back. Last I checked, the stuff in front of the back is kind of important, but I guess he's just built different. He's keeping Majima alive so that he can help track him down the dandy man in the white suit, since this means that a third party is involved, which deepens the plot even more. That's like 4 or 5 groups all trying to get this girl. The plot kind of dogpiles on the poor girl. Before that, though, there's a scene that I think best helps you understand his character more. I wanted to get the raw info out of the way first.
だけどお前は牧村誠を殺せなかった。まあまあまあ100歩譲ってそういうこともあるかもな。俺もガキの頃足の折れた文鳥を拾って帰ってきたことがあるんだ。お袋に内緒で必死に育ててさ。確か名前は豆太郎だったかな。動物なんか興味もなかったくせに毎日餌やったりして可愛かったな。だが親に嘘ついたのがまずかった。
ある日家に帰ったら飼い猫の餌にされてたよ。生きたまま猫に食われる豆太郎を見て俺は思い知ったね。子は親に逆らえないってな。
ガキのくせに律儀なやっちゃ。
律儀ね。まあ確かに俺は素直でいい子だったよ。親の前ではな。
あ？
次の日その猫を殺してやったよ。お前のことは必ず殺すよ。でもその前にあの牧村誠を盗んでいった泥棒猫を始末しねえとな。
Needless to say, I don't think a healthy child mind would result in the killing of a mammal just after experiencing the first major death of their lives. Humans tend to be more off-put by killing off furry creatures. I feel like he was either very sensitive and snapped, which can happen, or more likely, he was always crazed to an extent and the event just pushed him to act. Psychopathy is different than psychosis. Psychosis is a detachment from reality. Antipsychotic meds help deal with the delusions and such. He could have had a bout of it, but seeing as how he's just generally a cunt otherwise, and seems to have a firm grip on reality, I'd say he's just an antisocial twat who is in the lifestyle because of his willingness to inflict harm on others and the ability to manipulate people. But enough armchair analyzing a middle-aged Japanese man for now. Time to have more story bullshit. He unties the mutt and then asks more info. Majima doesn't know jack shit about the dandy, nor does Sagawa know why so many people are after the woman. He was just told that Majima must be the one to kill her. The two come to realize that Nishitani, the batshit man, and Sarah, the well-dressed man, not that Nishitani is lacking in drip, both wanted her alive. Sagawa suggests the two might be working together, which, given all the details they have, isn't even a bad guess. It's wrong, but he's dealing with several other poker players when all he's got is 2 sevens, and the rest of the cards are ash on the table. Since Nishitani is in jail, Sagawa sends Majima to go find a way to get at him, since otherwise they don't have any other leads. Next time we see the cat killer, he grabs Majima by the throat and drills him non-sexually. Sorry for blue-balling you DILF fans. About Majima daring to go and visit Nishitani in jail, since, technically he had to leave the city. Anyway, after a bit of domestic violence, damaged daddy is placated when he's told the info that Majima got from Nishitani. Impressed that he got a weirdo like him to talk, he then goes on about the place that Sarah has brought Makoto, a den of vice and violence, a place where a woman's screams would not be out of place. He settles on a family road trip there, as he and Majima are ready to go to this wonderland, for people that don't understand what consent is. The two split up, Sagawa revealing that not only did he bring heat, he intends to blast the brains out of every living person that stands between him and Makoto's dead body, and yes, that includes her still functioning brain. Well, mostly functioning. She does suffer from psychogenic blindness. Majima realizes that a shot to death Makoto is no longer an alive Makoto, and so he needs to get there first, beating the fuck out of weird dudes in masks until eventually meeting up with Sarah, who tests his resolve because of fucking course the story needs to drag shit out in order for bad stuff to happen. Said bad stuff being Sagawa shooting Sarah in the back. Thanking Majima for distracting him, seemingly not picking up on that he's being betrayed once again, he gets a business card belonging to some jackass named Kazama Kiryu, once again teasing our already blue and aching balls and or ovaries of the eventual conflict between our two leads that will never come to a head. Sagawa says that this family vacation is being extended. They're going to K-Town so they can track K-Man down so they can K-ill Makoto to death. Sagawa ends up stuck in a one-room prison of his own making since he can't show his face in Tojo territory, leaving Majima the only one of the dreadful duo that has any degree of operational flexibility. Majima asks why they can't just ask his other dad for help, but Sagawa explains that this is for political reasons. He can't look weak in front of Shimano. Turns out that Shimano is trying to get to the top of the Tojo in exchange for splitting K-Town with the Omi. Since K-Town is only part of Tokyo and the Tojo control Tokyo, this is actually not an awful idea on Shimano's part, because the Omi would keep trying to take over the rest of the city thing, but that's only if Shimano cares about remaining the head of the Tojo in anything but name. Sagawa also eventually lets it slip that Shimano's plan of having Makoto killed by Majima makes no sense, though that's because Shimano is working like an ogre. This man's got layers. But also, the reason why Sagawa wants to get all this done as well is so that he can be the Omi's point man in this operation. He'd get their chunk of K-Town, and the stronger their starting position, the better. He sends Majima to go and find more info on the real estate firm, staying in his goon cave all the while. Just straight jorking it. We next see the man when his oath brother summons him to have a chat after having taken Majima off the street. Shimano told him that he should have observed proper etiquette, likely to flex on him a little bit. Turns out that Shimano was playing his bro and Majima like fiddles at the same time. Sagawa doesn't like the idea that he's been used like this, convinced that he was facilitating the murder of an innocent woman, when really he was playing matchmaker in some roundabout fashion. When Shimano points out that Kazama cannot act out directly against Dojima, namely because he works under him, and therefore needs to use proxies, Sagawa brings up that Shimano is not dissimilar. Majima is useful because he's off the records of the family, an entity outside of the system that Shimano can use and discard if necessary. Not unlike the Task Force 141 from Call of Duty back when I was in high school, Majima is disavowed and able to operate outside of official channels. If he was caught, he would have been claimed to have been operating of his own accord. Along the way, Sarah is brought up again, but Sagawa says that he's not a danger anymore since he shot him. So saith the man who was shot basically the same way by the same exact man. Shimano corrects him, even says that it's good that he's not dead. They can use him to get at Kazama later. Shimano eventually tells the two to track down Kiryu via his oath brother Nishiki. Sagawa tries to lighten the mood by bringing up despite the day not being great for him personally, it's wonderful for Majima, who no longer needs to end the life of Makoto. This does little to make Majima feel any better. Next time we see Sagawa, he tries being a smug prick like always, chastising Majima and asking him why he's not finding Makoto for him to kill and for making his life so much more complicated. However, the dog is starting to get madder and madder, snipping back that he needs to go to the Dojima family offices because they had her shot. Trying to reassert his authority, he grabs the mutt by the collar and tries to make demands, met with Majima insisting that he's not taking orders anymore and that he will kill anybody who makes a move against Makoto. Sagawa eventually realizes that the dog has gone mad and admits that the dog has finally broken out of his cage. In his penultimate appearance, we see him standing outside a meeting with Shimano and the Omi representative. They're negotiating the terms of their agreement, but since the lot is in the hands of Sarah, none of this fucking matters anymore. Sagawa takes it with more grace than is expected of a man that has had a hair-trigger temper so far. Seeing that Majima has a gun, Sagawa asks if he's there to plug Shimano for his treachery, but not getting an answer, he stops Majima one last time, to tell him that despite everything, he feels as though they've had a great time together. Finally, the last time that we see the damaged daddy himself is after Majima has gotten his classic look, the funny jacket and the bastardized mix of an undercut and a bowl cut. Like how Nishiki dogged on Kiryu, Sagawa tries to dog on the big dog himself. Now let's let the scene play out, because it's pretty good as well.
俺は決めたんや。何が正しくて何が悪いかわからんこの街で誰よりも楽しく誰よりも狂った生き方したるってな。
はあ、お前はもっと地味な男だと思っていたが、まあそれも悪くねえ。 まあお前とは妙な体験しちまったが、これからは同業として陰ながら応援すんぜ。関西で暴れたい時は連絡よこせ。
そんなもんいらん。できることならもうあんたとは死ぬまで会わんでいたいもんや。
確かにな。まあお互い敵も多い身だ。せいぜい死なないように頑張ろうぜ。
あんたは死んでもしないやろ。
そうだな。
ほな、またな。大きにやで、佐賀。
は？何言ってんだお前。
あんたは何があっても諦めへん。執着心の塊のような男や。あんたには諦めんことの重要さを教わったわ。俺も執着するで。真島五郎っちゅう男の生き方に。
好きにしろ。あの世で待ってるぜ、真島ちゃん。はあ、ずいぶん早いお迎えだね。さ。
Unfortunately for him, while Majima's out of touch, he himself is out of time. Sagawa wasn't a good man, and you might expect me to say that he wasn't a bad man either. No, he was a piece of shit, but he was a believable piece of shit. I've met people that, when given any degree of control over another person, they have taken no shortage of glee in making them suffer. To a degree, he did what he did out of more than sadism. I truly believe he lived the life to the fullest that he could. He knew he wasn't a good man, that his lifestyle was full of bad people, and he played the role fully. Or rather, he filled it well. It's in him that we can see how Majima used cruelty and the lifestyle's unwritten rules to justify his behavior, living through the early 90s onwards after his future girlfriend got an abortion, and then he struck her, and it drove him off the edge by disassociating to a degree until about 2006 or so, which is when Yakuza 2 happens, I believe. In the end, he got what was coming to him. But fuck if he wasn't worth the watch. Through the eyes of the blind, what can be seen that those of vision cannot? Perhaps in the end it is the blind being led by the one-eyed man that has seen the most. Of truth, of justice, of love. During our time with Makimura Makoto, and as somebody born and raised in Michigan, it's taking every ounce of restraint to not call her after one of our brightest stars.
Mom spaghetti!
We are able to better see the world of the game through the lens of somebody who isn't shrouded in the darkness of the underworld. A true civilian in all senses of the word, that hasn't been tainted by the shadows, that have tried to cling to her for years now. A woman who, despite being written as a damsel in distress, including the dumb choices the plot forces her to make, still shows strength and determination that a lot of women aren't afforded in fiction. So what does a woman who sees through falsehoods and artificial walls see in our resident mad dog? Well, that's for me to spend multiple thousands of words trying to articulate. Going from the first time we hear her name, it's instead used as a false name for a massive man, Wen-Hai Lee. Already a good start to a romance, but also it's kind of funny and bittersweet that Lee is meant to invoke the image of his sworn brother, and I only just now realized that Oda too is meant to look like a previous character, famed hater of single mothers, Akiyama. Thankfully, Akiyama didn't traffic anybody sexually, just turned down a woman leaving her shitty husband because she wasn't able to get a job in the Pussy Poppin' district. After finding out that, indeed, it's the young masseuse and not the man that is massive, Majima is conflicted regarding if he should slay this young woman. He helps her get away from some goons sent to grab her, and along the way, the intimacy of the relationship begins when they have to pretend to be together a few times, and once they are in a safe place, she falls to her knees and clings to his.
ここまで来たら大丈夫やろ。お前大丈夫か。おい、何を。大丈夫や。もう大丈夫や。
店長は
心配すんな。奴も逃げた。すぐに会えるはずや。
本当に。
ああ。
どうしてこんなことに。
The chapter, and this section for Majima, closes out with him being reflected with the blade he would try to use to kill her, showing him being conflicted in this lifestyle choice he might make because he believes that he has to. Closing out on that, leaving us in suspense, it's the kind of blue balls that can work well on a first-time playthrough. But this is my third time, so for me it's more... It helps to show that he's a wannabe hitman with a heart. This is a dude that goes and watches softcore porn in a CD VHS shop, helps a little girl get stuffed animals, and loves himself some 80s pop. Motherfucker looks more happy, dressed up, and on roller skates than damn near any other time we see his visually impaired ass. Our next time spent with the singular function eye-possessing duo is when she's stashed in a warehouse owned by a friendly rival of Majima. Majima presses her for info on the man with the bat tattoo, but not wanting to answer him, she tells him to ask Lee, who may or may not be dead at the present time. Setting out to find the sex worker-loving giant, he eventually does so in a den of vice and violence, a mahjong parlor. Thankfully, I wasn't forced to learn the Devil's Click-Clack game, though Majima is forced to endure it over cutscenes that he and Lee chat before, eventually getting into another violent altercation. Once that's settled, Lee explains things about the man with the bat tattoo, the shittier prequel to the famed story about a girl with a tattoo of a dragon. Far less revenge bondage. Anyway, the guy's a piece of shit that sold Makoto into sexual slavery. The experience caused her to develop psychogenic blindness. It's understandable why Makoto didn't want to talk about it with Majima. One day, I plan on making a video specifically about how games handle sexual violence, but this video is not that video, as I need to play other games that I can better cover the topic. For the time being, though, I'll say that, besides Majima's rather tasteless, wasn't the best thing to say. Maybe it was better in the original Japanese. Majima returns to the warehouse, and the two bond over the traumas that they've experienced together. That's how you know the series is queer. Trauma dumping and bonding are like first and second dates for queer people. Third date is sloppy sex that makes the heteros regretteros having functioning eyes. Back to the blind woman. Majima eventually suggests that they should eat, because evidently women are sad and grumpy about being kidnapped because they're just a bit hungry. So he grabs them some takoyaki, a recurring thing with them, and upon returning with the steaming hot balls, they partake of them together. Majima notices that the sightless girl wears a wristwatch, something useless to somebody before the invention of braille-based timepieces, but it used to play a song that she was fond of, so she kept it. However, it's broken now, but she keeps it as a memento. Deciding that it's holding her back for some reason, she discards it, but unbeknownst to her, because she can't fucking see. Majima pockets it to use for later. Fucking Mickey Mouse meme, this is a secret tool for later. Before leaving to go work his night job, he asks her if she knows Sagawa by chance. Since she doesn't, this just deepens the mystery that I've basically already explained, but it's nice to show the early steps as we go along. Also, and this might just be because I like world building, and at least Skyrim thought about it, where and how does she shit and piss in that place? She keeps being left alone for long stretches of time, and I know that in survival situation, people's bodies sort of shut down, but like, she's eating and drinking. Surely, she's been needing to piss and shit at some point. The fact that Makoto's chamber pot isn't a heat action item for later fights is a missed opportunity. Later, we see Makoto when Lee is beginning to explain the plan to get out of town with the three of them alive. But the plan is one that a former hitman would make, so he drugs the blind woman so that she'd fall asleep while he and Majima fight over if it's a good idea to kill a serial killer to cover up her death. Honestly, not a bad idea, so as long as he's telling the truth. But since the last time Majima was almost tricked into murdering a woman was based on falsehoods, I don't know if I would trust Saejima Light here. The two duke it out like two morally ambiguous apes before Majima puts his foot down regarding the issue. Lee's backstory of having a little girl that went blind and eventually died is sad, but Majima won't have some stranger's death in his conscience despite totally using a knife on enemies later in the game. Majima fucks off with the uniform meant to disguise the woman as Makoto, as well as the pictures of the woman, disposing them at a public park. The next day, it's in the news that Makoto is dead. Lee wants to congratulate Majima on a job well done, but the poor Cyclops is more confused than anything. After many shenanigans I've already covered before, Makoto finally wakes up from being drugged and wants to know what the fuck is going on, which is understandable. She, however, is still a woman in a Yakuza game, and thus doesn't have all that much agency since multiple criminal organizations are after her. Credit to her, though, for feeling bad that multiple people are risking their lives to ensure that she doesn't get taken. Majima at least does tell her what's going on to an extent, who is after her and that she and Lee should leave since Sagawa might be wise to deploy to fake her death. Lee isn't sure that the Yakuza won't just hunt them down anyway, but Majima says that he's going to try and make sure that they can survive, somehow. Unfortunately, before they can fuck off, the Chinese doctor does his betrayal scene. Majima has to beat up Sagawa's men, and with the doctor almost dead, Lee decides that the plot will force him to choose the dying doctor that betrayed them as more important than making sure that Makoto is safe. So Majima has to go run with her back to the clinic so that they can take Lee's van. But Lee's van does the best Hindenburg impression that it can, which leads to Makoto being nabbed by Sarah. It's a while before we see her again. The previous few chapters about trying to get her after she gets nabbed by Sarah. By the time we see her again, however, it's Kiryu's time to be her caretaker. Of course, our least favorite human trafficker is there to ruin things, so I'll just skip to the part where they're alone in a shady motel again. We learn more about her backstory, though by now the details have been covered in the story. She still retains the light inside of her that the story has been trying to stamp out all along. Still saddened by the fact that the people trying to help her keep dying or going missing. Kiryu has some rather touching words on how he relates to her.
私の人生ひどいよね。なんか。
ああ、ひどいな。長いこと暗い道を歩いていると、この先もずっと暗いもんだと思っちまう。前に進むことが嫌になる。自分の道がこの先どうなってるか分かってるやつなんてこの世に一人もいねえ。 俺らにできるのは立ち止まって泣くか一歩でも前に進むかの二つだけだ。あんたはどっちでも好きな方を選んでいい。入り口までは俺が案内してやる。
私、カムロ町に行きます。兄に絶対に会いたいんです。だから私を連れてってください、桐生さん。
ああ。
He offers to help bring her to where she wants, where she needs to be. Her strength lies in purity of purpose, something that she doesn't let go of, no matter what happens. While the plot doesn't give her much in the way of shit to do, to impact how things play out, she does stay true to herself for as long as anybody reasonably could. The two of them end up in K-Town, and while trying to get a hold of Tachi, Kiryu seems to not be able to, so Makoto gets dumped on the homeless man that he stayed with the other night. She remains there while Kiryu goes off to talk with Tachi, though by the time Kiryu returns, it's not with her brother, but instead his brother, Nishiki. The three get all their stories explained before Kiryu and Nishiki leave to try and go and rescue the cyborg, once again leaving his sister to await his return. Kiryu, of course, promises to bring him back, and knowing what happens, it helps to show why I don't make promises. When the siblings do reunite, it's when his body has already gone cold.
Kiryu。
お兄ちゃん、お兄ちゃんは？お兄ちゃん、どこ？え？
I've said it before on the channel, I believe, but I never got to have any last words with any of my dead relatives. They all die horribly, suddenly, not unlike Tachibana. I understand her grief. I remember all the phone calls and stop-ins by other family members. How preventable it all was. Her brother's death was a tragedy, and a long line of tragedies in her life, and the worst part was that they weren't even done with her. When Majima is looking for Makoto to try and save her from the scheming, the plotting, he runs off towards the empty plot. There, he sees a figure up on a nearby rooftop where the owner of the plot of land is standing, staring. He rushed up there to reach her, and asking if it's really her, she silently answers this question by turning around before speaking.
あなたにはまた会えると思ってた。
In her eyes is reflected the man most hell-bent on saving her, and whose love has been eroding the bars of his cage for as long as they've known each other. As she felt her brother's lifeless body, the darkness began to seep into her. So too, though, did the light begin to enter her eyes again. The contrast is something that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. How once she was one of the few characters capable of seeing others in a light that they aren't regularly allowed to be seen in, as a civilian not stuck in the pits of the underworld. It's through her brother's death that she can finally see both the light and the dark. Majima tries to have her abandon any notion of vengeance, instead seeking safety in the deal with Shimano, but she herself sees no point in safety anymore. The deaths of Sohei Dojima, Daisuke Kuze, Hiroki Awano, and Kaiji Shibusawa are all that matters now, her dead brother's vengeance, at her behest, being what drives her. She even offers the money from the sale of the lot, a twist on the fact that he was really going to kill her, her seeing all aspects of the entire plot now awakening her to how they operate in the underworld, even if she herself is too weak to do any of it herself. Though she does believe, falsely, that this is what Tachibana would have wanted. Majima tries telling her this, but she takes off, trying to tell him that she's fine on her own right before tripping and falling right after. The face that he makes when she says to leave her alone, it reminds me of how I felt taking care of my old man when he'd get dope sick. Some symptoms of it include shitting yourself, puking, being a pissy cunt, muscle aches, and pains. For a man that had chronic pain and half his body being a wreck, it was twice as bad. Majima, of course, offers her food. She accepts, and the two begin a walk through town to get her octopus balls to shove in her mouth. While they walk, you're forced to actually walk. You can't run, and as she kept falling over and over again, I turned back to try and help her, but she kept getting up on her own. My old man didn't always get up on his own. Back then, I could lift him one-handed, and that was before he died at the weight of 80 or so pounds. I see in her, during her time spent in this fresh hell, my old man at his most weak. In what she might see as strength, her gaining the desire to see others finally killed for their misdoings. She's ironically just as weak as a middle-aged trans man whose body is ravaged by addiction trying to operate a failing body. Their first attempt to get takoyaki is thwarted by a rush of people. Which is funny, the places are only busy when the plot demands it. This place is normally deader than a bar on a Tuesday. She brings up that she smelled a cart earlier, and the two resume their slow walk towards the belated balls. They discuss the weather, a classic awkward conversation to have, before she thanks him for walking slow right after she falls over again. He jokes about running everywhere, probably because to make the game not take even longer, players tend to run as much as they can, and myself included. Once at the food cart, the two have a tender moment where he gets a fallen leaf out of her hair, and she lets the cart owner know that he is in fact a keeper, for having suffered so much for her, and that he's still willing to endure further suffering for her sake. Her conflicting motivations are at odds within her, like two wolves, only instead of both of them being gay, both of them still love Majima, but in a very different way. The two bicker a bit about her plans. She's more shut down than anything, just wanting to make it work rather than think about the logistics about it. Her brother's corpse, fresh in her mind, likely has her acting more out of character than ever before. When my old man died, I largely operated off of instinct and what plans I had in place before. I only started to feel any semblance of self months later, after I'd been fucked over by my grandmother, and an agreement was reached regarding his ashes. I was facing jail time, so I settled for her only getting half of them, breaking my promise that my old man had me make when I was 16 to keep his remains safe from her. For this, I was disowned in writing, something that her and her spineless husband denies existing, despite him personally handing me the letter they had the funeral home draft up telling me that I'm not actually my dead father's child. So, I get it. I get what she's feeling, or rather, isn't feeling. She sends Majima away to get more balls, but slips away while he does so. We next see her when she's trying to convince Dojima to kill his LTs in exchange for the lot. Of course, it doesn't work, it never would have, but she's relying on instinct when she's both out of her depth and out of her mind. After the falling out between me and the woman that shat my old man out onto this bitch of an earth, she began locking her doors in fear of what I might do to her. I was the strongest, the brightest, and the best of our family. She never understood that I had more important things to do in my life than, risk murdering an old cunt that beat her children to the point where they turned to substance abuse to dull the pain of being alive with such an awful woman for a mother. But she did back me into a corner, where I was already facing jail time. Any natural urges of revenge against the leading cause of my father's drug-induced suicide were curbed by the fact that other people in my life I need to take care of. Since then, one has stopped talking to me. She's currently stuck in a war zone of her own free will, helping to remind me that people create their own hells no matter how much I love them. And just as Majima reaches her, she feels the pain of her own hell finally impact her at several hundred meters per second via a 9mm round to the abdomen. Majima tears through the men left behind to finish him off, with Dojima and his crew taking off via helicopter, Makoto left bleeding out on the ground. Eventually, Sarah and his men arrive to evac her, him telling Majima that he gets to come along this time.
Makoto, おい聞こえるか死ぬんやない。復讐でも何でもお前の望みを俺が叶えとるから。せやから頼む。
Even just getting him cremated was a process. The funeral home kept fucking up, not answering their phones when somebody else was willing to pay for the cremation. They also managed to both misgender and misname my old man in multiple instances, either attaching female pronouns to his legal masculine name, or using masculine ones for his feminine dead name. Truly, fuck-ups of the highest order. Along the way, I was repeatedly told that I was next of kin, that I could sign for things, all up until his mother wouldn't agree to abide by what his wishes were. In Michigan, the wishes of the deceased don't matter. Some bullshit fucking laws. After a certain point, I was left feeling like Majima, scrambling for what I could do in a situation where nobody in my life was of any use in helping me with anything, either practically or emotionally. While Makoto is in a coma due to her injury, the world around her is ablaze. At times, literally. She's now more of an object to be dangled about, to be traded and recovered, only beginning her path to recovering after Majima has torn his way through the Dojima family. Awano lay dead, killed by Dojima's assassin. Kuze and Shibusawa were both arrested, though that was on Kiryu's end. The two protagonists in their own ways avenged Tachibana, and in some small way ensured that even Makoto's worst impulses were satiated. To me, the best revenge for my old man I can think of to acquire is to do what I'm doing. To do good in his name. To do my best to live well. As the channel grows, I'll be able to help more and more people, myself included, my younger family members too. We were all harmed by our family cycles of bitter behavior. Just as Majima has accepted his new life as a mad dog, he meets Makoto again, several months after the events of the main story. The cutscene is far too long to just let it play here, so I'll cover the most important details. She is out walking with the nurse or doctor that had told Majima of her condition. They're going to meet up with the surgeon that did the operation. Unfortunately, a couple of goons under Majima's employ try to get them to feature in a porn flick, not taking no for an answer. He eventually has to get them to go fuck themselves via direct applications of force. This is after Makoto was able to get the other girl to run off, risking herself at the hands of these two men. Mind you, this is all in broad daylight, and helps to show the kind of shit that happens in the real world. Sexual abuse isn't all behind closed doors, but Majima ensures that she doesn't hear him speak. Her eyes are working finally, and he doesn't want her to make the connection. When the surgeon finally arrives, it turns out that he does have feelings for her. Pushing his own down, Majima forces the man to act on his feelings, ensuring that Makoto will move on. However, despite the sadness in his eyes, the lingering feelings, he does leave her with one last kindness that she encounters upon returning to the empty lot.
全部終わったよ。もうだからゆっくり休んでね、お兄ちゃん。私ね、たくさんの人に助けられた。リーさんや桐生さん、世良さん、本当にたくさん。でも一人だけまだお礼を言えていない人がいるの。ずっと一緒にいたのにその人の名前も知らない。顔だっておぼろげにしか見てない。ほんとダメだよね、私って。お兄ちゃんがこんなこと言われても困っちゃうか。ごめん。私のありがとう。ありがとう。
With that, her part in the story of Yakuza 0 is over. Through Kuze, we saw how hell is other people, how they can test us, judge us, cut us into better shapes. But can we not find heaven in other people as well? Kindness, love, tenderness. People that can soften us into better shapes. Makoto helped Majima see that there were things worth living for, beyond just a sense of shame, a desire to make right what once went wrong, even if it was outside of our control. Sure, yes, he went mad as a way to get out of having to mentally deal with what he was living in, the hell that he chooses for himself, but it's through the love of Makoto that one day he would be able to move on from that falsehood, live as himself, the himself that was yearning to breathe free for nearly 2 decades. Heaven may need to be reached through violence, but that violence need not always define who we are. As I've said before in the video, sometimes we are born broken. Homare Nishitani is a man that gives off natural born crazy vibes. Not sure what flavor of it though. but he is a man that knows the lifestyle he's in and lives it as fully as he can. He burns bright, but doesn't burn long, unlike the Yakuza series that is currently lingering on 14 or so games. Depends on if you count side games or not, and to what extent. Like, are we talking about that fucking zombie game? Anyway, he pops up in the story after murdering some woman, calling Majima and setting up a date with him at the cabaret. Once Majima gets there, the mad lad is mad groping the tits of some hostess. This is against the rules, of course, so Majima isn't happy. Nishitani refuses to answer anything of substance until he and Majima beat the shit out of each other. Since that's also against the rules, he thinks fast and calls the cops on himself, saying that he was gonna rob the place. The fat stacks of cash that he used to rent the entire place for himself was likely the cover story, and also shows how little the man cares for losing things in his life. After the two have some fun on the floor, Nishitani's boner growing 3 sizes that day. He still won't say jack about shit. Majima is left with little in the way of answers and fucks off to go to his office where his second daddy was awaiting him. Later on, Majima tracks down the best way to locate Nishitani, who is currently vibing in a jail cell. After he thrashes his way through the offices, finds some detective who gives some backstory on our resident hedonistic hombre, while day drinking on a boat before sending Majima to where Charon resides. After winning fights against degenerates like a Jonkla ripoff, a medical practitioner, and a dude with a Metal Gear-ass name. After that, we get more Nishitani backstory, namely that he's pretty good at killing people. See, the detective adopted the lad when his crimes were just pickpocketing, but eventually the kid graduated to murder when somebody killed his adoptive sister. This taught the detective that sometimes crimes are dope as shit, and so eventually he opened up a death arena under the river so that he can both line his pockets and have the criminals beat each other to death. For all his contributions to society, Nishitani gets to use the jail as his private hangout to avoid dealing with pesky things like rival criminals. The detective brings the Cyclops to hang out with his middle-aged delinquent man-child, who's laying down for an afternoon nap. Majima kicks the fucker awake, and we have a lovely cutscene.
Huh? こらこらこら。真島君やないか。どないしたん？万引きでもしたんか。
お前に会いに来たんや、西谷。
ほんまに嬉しいわ。ちょうどわしも真島君に会いたい思っとったとこなんやで。
はあ？お前が俺に何の用や。
この前の殴り合いはほんまに楽しかったな。思い出しただけでもうっとりしてまうわ。せやけど警察に邪魔されて最後まで蹴りがつかんかったやろ。
自分で呼んだんやないか。
アーセント真島君、お店では殴り合いしてくれへんねんもん。せやけどどんなにええ喧嘩でも蹴りつけへんのはあかん。野球の試合と同じやで。途中で腕ん中止になったら選手のええプレーも無意味になってまうやろ。
5回裏まで終わっとれば試合は有効や。
何言うてんねん。あの喧嘩はまだ1回表やで。わしは何としてももう一度殴り合うて楽しみたいんや。
おもろいおっさんやな。せやけど俺はそないなようで来たんとちゃう。誠がさらわれた。やったんはお前か。
なんや、仕事の話かい。
誠さらったんは白いスーツの見たこともない男や。
お前の仲間やないんか。
わしにそないな友達はおらんで。
なんやて。
せやけど予想はつく。わしでも真島君でもない第三の勢力や。
第三の勢力。一体何者や。
まあわしは大方目星ついとるけどな。
知っとるんか。誰なんや。
西谷さん、これ。
ああ、そうや。酒買うてきてくれるか。せっかくの来客や。酒頼むで。
わかりました。ちょっと待っとってください。
どないなっとんねんここは。
わしらみたいな仕事しとるとな、安全なねぐらがよう見つからんのや。ほんとこそうちゃうか。
あ。
せやけどここはお上に守られた日本一安全なねぐらや。
こないな連中に囲まれて安全やと。
拳一つでわしの玉取ろっちゅうような人間はおらん。大抵は刃物や飛び道具使ってきよる。ここやったらそないなもん持ち込めへんからな。ここはほんまに熟睡できる我が家や。
西谷、誠をさらった第三の勢力は何者や。
そうやな。真島君は知りたいわな。佐川のおっさんには到底調べ上げれん相手やもんな。教えてあげようかな。けどどないしようかな。
おとなしくはかんと今度は楽しい殴り合いで済まんことになるで。
そんな言われるとわしごっつい期待してしまうで真島君。この間よりもっともっと楽しませてくれるっちゅうことやもんな。
Once again, Nishitani wants an ass kicking after talking in baseball innuendo, but since I'm on that JRPG grind set, it doesn't take long to kick his nuts in, though seeing as how he's throbbing before the fight.
もう我慢できへん。
変わったやつやな。お望み通りとことんしばき倒したるわ。
After a nice little slicing and dicing, Nishitani is spent on the floor and likely needs a change of undies. Good thing I always have my boys stacked with tissue packets handed out by minimum wage earning women. Nishitani finally opens up to us, and not just in a fun gay way. Man, with all that talk of baseball allegories, you'd think they'd have referenced positions and such, but that's more of an American thing, and these guys fuck in the Japanese style. He lets loose that it's likely Sarah that nabbed Makoto, and that the Nikio Consortium are the full force behind his actions. Sarah's the leader. He compares the groups to relevant organizations in the real world at the time.
アメリカの CIA、ソ連の KGB。
No longer relevant since, well, the USSR isn't around anymore, but a phantom of the KGB is currently committing war crimes in Ukraine, so maybe still a bit relevant. Along the way, he also explained that there are 3 factions at play trying to nab Makoto. For clarification, they are the Consortium, the Shimano family, as well as the Dojima family. Worst threesome I've ever heard of, honestly. Majima and he talk further with Nishitani, trying to scare him off from soloing Sarah and his men, but upon further prodding, is up to go take on them together, though he still wants to get paid for the job of handing her off to Shibusawa. Majima has none of this, seeing himself as responsible for her now, and seeing a bit of himself in Majima, besides in the obvious homoerotic sense. He gets pumped up to just go and do it for the sake of his new sweetheart. In the Cyclops, he sees a bit of himself as a teenage murderer avenging his adoptive sister. Unfortunately, homophobia in the shape of a paid-off guard arrives just as the boys are about to go and have some fun felonies together. Nishitami's cop daddy got of it, and then he himself stands up to the gunman to make sure that Majima can escape. Guy goes out hard, but not as balls out as he would have liked to do with his precious Majima-kun.
おっちゃん真島君わしはこのアホンダラと片つける
西谷あんた
思いっきり暴れたらええ思いっきり楽しんだらええヤクザなんぞどうせ早う死ぬんやなら後先考えんと自分の道前に進めや
何言うとるんやさっさとくたばらんかい
早う行けや真島誠っちゅう女生かした責任きっちり取っとらんかい行けや真島
許してくれ頼む
Turns out that getting shot a lot just turns him into a zombie. I hope he ate the dude's fucking face off. The worst part was the dude betrayed the cop dad and Nishitani because his daughter was starting college or some shit. Now she's got no dirty money coming in and no dad. Heteros stay losing, I guess. When Majima and Wano had beat the fuck out of each other, he brings up Nishitani and how he lived like a crazy idiot. He also brought up Lee, but he didn't so much as die like a crazy idiot as he died like any target of the IRA. Nishitani was the proto-mad dog, a man who could not be kept caged, a man who chose his own life, and while that life did claim his own in the end, he went out on his own terms, bloody, screaming, and probably with more cum in his underwear than in all the tissues that the protagonist used throughout the game. Built like a sumo wrestler, but with the cunning of a big pussy, Shimano is a man whose hunger far outpaces his capacity. He's the man that took Majima's eye, his brother, his freedom, and in exchange, Majima kept him alive and sustained for a long time. Shimano first shows up well into the story, at least in person. He summons Majima and Sagawa to meet with him, but seeing as how I already covered that earlier, I'll just give the basics. He's likely the third most plotting man in the plot, Kazuma being first, and maybe Dojima or Shibusawa is second. Hell, for the fact that he jammed Majima into the plot, one of the few things that Kazama didn't plan for, he might even be the second most effective one. At the end of it all, he got half of what he wanted. Dojima didn't dominate the clan. Sure, he didn't get to take over the Tojo himself, but he's sure that in a decade's time, his family will run it. But, that didn't happen. We'll see that in the next Yakuza game, which I should be covering in December, since it's a Christmas title, but also going off script a little bit, and also this is the second time I have to record this because Audacity decided to fuck up. It's going to be the 20th anniversary of Yakuza 1 in December of this year, 2025. It came out on December 8th, and so I'll try to squeeze in the review then. At the very least, throughout December, I'll be able to put out videos. I'll probably make a video later on about how I'm going to be changing up how I cover these games, because honestly, covering this game in the way that I did, not great. It's been killing me kinda, But anyway, it's also, this is helping to inflate Shimano's section, because guess what? The next thing I gotta read is, this section is pretty short because there's not really much to talk about that wasn't already covered by the other sections. Shimano's a big fat bald cunt, and not the kind I wanna fuck. Honestly, can't even say that he did all that much to change Majima's character besides abuse him until he snapped. But in snapping, Majima was able to keep Shimano at bay. As well, he'd eventually outlast him and be considered a pillar of the Tojo, while Shimano was seen with a good amount of disdain over time. Achieving apotheosis isn't for all of us. We don't always get through the other side of the tunnel and find light. Becoming divine in form and function isn't what Majima needed to survive the lifestyle he chose for himself. He needed to drink deep and descend into the darkest pits that he could find. When he began his journey, he was a beaten and starved dog in a cage, left there to rot by his master until he was of use again. He performed every duty that he had diligently, thriving in the tasks set before him, but never quite being able to meet his full potential. No, this dog needed to break free of his cage before he could become a master of his own life, and the people that he met along the way helped to ensure that this always faithful dog can learn new tricks. Sagawa taught him to endure, and proceed no matter what stood in his way, and that the politics of the Yakuza were messier than the pants of a well-paying customer when girls get too frisky with them after one too many overpriced drinks. Despite the beatings and mistreatment, he somehow was less bad overall than Shimano, because at least Sagawa was largely a straight shooter regarding his goals. We can sort of see an early sign of how Majima behaves towards Kiryu in that sort of mentor role, but more twisted. In Makoto, we see something that gets hidden over time. Human decency, kindness, love. Well, healthy love, as healthy as a failed assassin and a victim can be. She presented him a life that could have been better for him, and had he not been dead set on being there for his oath brother when he would one day get out of prison. Though he eventually was gonna marry another girl sometime, so it's a bit messy. That's a Yakuza 5 problem.
よし、おまけでもう一つサービスしちゃう。
本当ですか？
With Nishitani, we see the mask. And just as an autistic kid needs to pretend to be neurotypical, so too did Majima need to learn how to be something he's not. To be batshit. Far more horny. The man that collected cards of lewd women wasn't nearly horny enough to survive the world of shirtless, oiled-up men fisting each other. Through the Osakan Madman, his erection grew 3 sizes. Just as with Makoto, his heart was filled to bursting. What a shitty medical condition. Shimano's kind of a cunt that just abused him and used him. My birth giver wasn't much different. And with that, my cunt count for the video has reached the double digits. Congratulations, Shimano. You actually won something, you bald asshole. In the end, he had to break so that he could keep on going. Abuse victims tend to learn behaviors that get them where they need to be, but have to hide who they really are. They may shatter, lock themselves in, or ward others off, but at the center, they're still a human being that deserves care just as any other. Unless, they're continuing the cycle, in which case go fuck themselves. Thankfully, we got wacky wahoo man Majima eventually. Though, it is jarring seeing him behave as he did in the OG scenes from Yakuza 1, but that's something to discuss in December. The Yakuza series, I've watched through the ones I haven't played, save for the most recent ones, are about family. They're about love, duty, honor, homoeroticism. Yakuza 0 helps show what our parents force us into, and how we adapt to those environments. To an extent, the boys did choose the life, and once you do, anything that happens to you in relation to it is on you. But the life didn't need to be so bitter as it turned out to be. Kiryu honestly believed that honor was what drove the Yakuza. Majima didn't seem to have any such beliefs, but did think that the bonds that are between brothers was worth any amount of suffering. I got to see some of my experiences being reflected in a lot of the characters in the game, as well as one of the last games I finished before my old man got hooked on hard drugs again, back when he only was addicted to painkillers. When I first played the game, I felt more like Kiryu, right? I was younger, I wanted to do right by my family more, but I had, for a long time understood that my family was fucked up. But now, I'm more like Majima. I endure. I outlast. I behave how I wish to. But unlike him, it's not an act. I just don't silence myself like I used to. I don't hold back for the sake of people that don't understand me. But at the center of it all, I'm not dissimilar to who I used to be. Or rather, the better parts of me aren't deadened. And because it went into my head, and it's I can't get it out of my head, it's sort of like watching SpongeBob. When you're younger, you're like, oh, I'm a spongy Bobby boy. And then eventually you're like, man, I'm more like Squidward. I just want to be left alone to do my weird esoteric bullshit. The sub-stories really help shine a light on the boys, who they are when they aren't tied up in some grand conspiracy. Because of this, I will also be doing a video later on about them, likely a ranking video, one of those tier lists, since people cream themselves over tier lists. Humans love lists. Yakuza 0 got me into the series, and it got me well enough that I plan on covering the rest of the games over the next few years. It's gonna be a long journey, and if you'd like to follow along, I'd be thankful. Any questions about my old man, or about the games, I'll answer them down below. If nothing else, these videos are for raising awareness for trans-masculine people, as well as just trans people in general.
Yo. Kiryu-chan!
Due to still not having the space that I need to build a small shrine for my old man, I will be working on this here digital collage by adding these two felonious fistfuckers. I'd like to thank you for watching, as well as my current patrons over on Patreon. There's only 2 at the moment, but their support still means a lot to me. Their names are Connor and Misty. I thank them for helping enable me to pay for my phone bill this month, as well for future months. If you'd like to support me, there is a link to my Patreon in the description of this video. My next big video is on Coffee Talk 2, Hibiscus and Butterfly, where once again I'll be talking about the patrons, including 2 new ones, I believe. See you next time, and until then, stay safe, stay alive, and remember that trans rights are human rights.